everyone, and welcome. It's 9 a.m. on Friday, December 12th, and I call to order the Governing Board Workshop meeting. Please, if you are able to rise, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Again, good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Christine Novello, Governing Board President for this fiscal year, and pleased to call this meeting to order. We have all 9 directors present. 8 of us are here in the room, and we have Director Piaskowski, who is remote. Jolene, could you say hello and just test your audio, please? We didn't hear you there, Jolene. I know that you were working on volume on your end. I just wanted you to know. If you do have the ability to come off mute and say hello at some point, we'll call on you. Oh, there you are. Good morning.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. So thanks. We have all 9 directors present. I will now read the meeting procedures. The Governing Board and its committees conduct all their meetings in compliance with Arizona Planned Community Association open meeting laws per ARS 33-1804 and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures, as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, will also be followed in all meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07, Procedures for Owner-Member Meetings, and Standing Rules number 2 and number 3. At this time, just want to remind us all to please take our phones, perhaps put them on silent. We love to hear your cheery ringtones, but maybe you don't want them to be ringing out for all to hear. So this is a good time to do that, and directors to take our phones off the tables as well. We'll move on to our business then with the approval of minutes, item 2.01. We have our minutes from our workshop on November 11th that were attached on the Governing Board Hub. Does anybody have any objections or changes? No. Okay, seeing none, those meeting minutes are considered approved. So we'll move on to new business, and we will start with 3.01. Chartered Club's chairperson, Nick Turner, will give us an update on his working group.
Yes, thank you, President Novello. The Chartered Clubs Committee is required by policy to review the RRMPs every year, and for the last 2 years we've done that by the formation of a working group. The working group has been meeting just about weekly throughout the fall, and they presented their first Red Line candidate at the Chartered Clubs Committee on December the 2nd. They've asked for feedback from the Chartered Clubs Committee, club presidents and residents to be fed back to them by December the 23rd. If anybody wants to take a look, the document's available on the hub attached to the December 2nd Chartered Clubs Committee meeting. If you can't find it, see me or email me, nick.turner@suncitywest.com. A second red line taking account of that feedback will be presented at the January Chartered Clubs Committee meeting on January the 6th. And if there are no changes to that, we may then move for a recommendation vote by the committee. If there are going to be further changes, then that will be delayed through to February. But whatever happens on the timeline, I expect it to be coming forward to be introduced to the Governing Board in March. At the latest, may even be here by the February workshop.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Turner. The directors will also remember that the Charter Clubs Committee invited directors to provide some early feedback as well. So thank you to your working group and to the committee for allowing us to do that. Directors are, just like everyone else, we can go out and take a look at that RRMP. If there are any items for questions or feedback, I'm sure that the working group would welcome those. So thank you for the update. Any questions or comments from our directors? Director Piaskowski, any questions?
No, you're good.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Director Turner. We'll move on to 3.0. Oh, any questions from our residents? Apologies. Excellent. So thanks again, and we'll move on then to 3.02 to Vice President and Chairperson Rudy Grom to give us an update on the Golf Committee and Working Group.
Well, thank you, President Novello. Yes, the Golf Committee, back at the October meeting, reviewed all 9 of our current golf policies. 7 of the policies will remain as they are written today. 2 of them, G04, use of powered golf vehicles, and G10, non-resident play, had some issues. So we formed a working group. That working group just met this past Wednesday, and they will have a redlined update of those 2 policies for us at the January Golf Committee meeting. In addition to that, I would urge anyone that's interested, at our January meeting, we will be looking at some issues with group play. We had a presentation yesterday by our golf operations manager, Pat O'Hara. He presented the data on group play, and we're going to have a new agenda item on the agenda at the January meeting to take a look at making a few minor changes, possibly to group play. And the other big thing will be, there will be changes to the G04 use of golf carts, basically. We're going to look at prohibiting certain types of tires and also possibly registering carts so that we know they comply with our, what will be updated policy. So that will all take place at the January meeting.
Thanks, Director Grom. That January meeting, I'm looking at a calendar really quick. That is 1:30 on January the 8th. Am I correct? Okay. So just to make note of it, and again, there are a lot of, thank you as well for attaching the summary of the policies for us. It sounds, again, our bylaws ask that we review each of our policies and present any changes by the end of January. But if the team, I know that you guys had a few little bumps in the road in terms of getting started timing-wise, so if you need more time, just please let me know. We can extend that. We've done that in the past with other policy reviews. Any questions from the directors on those? Questions from our residents or audience members? And I don't see anything online. Is that still correct, Secretary Forsey? Correct. All right, great. I should also say, for those of you who are watching online, there's always a bit of a delay, so you're hearing things about 30 seconds, 45 seconds after what's happening in the room. If we miss your questions, we'll come back to those, circle back to those at the end of the meeting. So feel free to type those in. We'll move on now to item 3.03. The Properties Committee has been very busy, as all our committees have been. So we'll start, though, before we go into policies, Chairperson Director John Chatton will give us an update on some capital project recommendations that came out of the Properties Committee at their last meeting. Director Chatton?
Thank you, President Novello. Property Committees does its tours every year. We did 5 tours this year, finishing on October 28th. So we're a little late in looking at some recommendations for capital projects. At the last Property Committee meeting, we looked at, I think there were 7 or 8 capital items that were on the list of our listing of all of what started to be maintenance items, but a lot of them weren't maintenance items, they were capital items. So we separated those and discussed them and talked about which ones we should leave for the master planning process and which ones we should recommend for inclusion in the 26-27 budget. Of those items, 3 were determined by the committee to move forward to the board. One was a commercial kitchen. They were looking at possibility of a commercial kitchen at a couple different places, but decided that in the end, any commercial kitchen, should it be included for future consideration, that site would be determined by the staff as to what would be the best place for that. R.H. Johnson Platform Tennis Reservation was on the capital improvement program once upon a time and was removed. The committee determined that they would like to see that back on. And then there's the R.H. Johnson Courtyard renovation. I think the committee was pretty unanimous that we need to do some renovation and some updating. And I think that was obvious in the tours that the board made on Tuesday and Wednesday, going to different places and getting more of a wow factor than what we have here. So we are requesting the board approve these 3 items for budget consideration.
And this would be, Director Chatton, these are for the upcoming, this would be included in, the recommendation is to include all 3 of these projects in the capital budget process that we are going to be considering starting in January. And this would be for the 27 fiscal year, so it's 26, 27, correct?
Correct.
When we say include. I would like to, and it sounds like the commercial kitchen concept and the courtyard renovation concept those would be new, whereas platform tennis was something that was at one point, as you mentioned, it was on the R&R list and was deferred by the general manager. I have that correct?
Correct.
So although I have questions about what these projects are, I'm going to start by opening it up to the other directors to see if you have any questions first, and if there are any questions remaining. If my questions don't get asked, I can always ask after. Does anyone have any questions about the recommendations? We'll start with Director Turner, and then we'll.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the list here. I'm not convinced that we have a we need a commercial kitchen or what its use would be. So that's something that I think should go into the long-term planning process. Do we need a commercial kitchen? How will it be used? Who will use it? When will it be used? I'm not convinced we need that one. The other thing is that I did watch the Properties Committee meeting on YouTube, and I believe at one point it said, if Nick were here. And that was in reference to some things for lawn bowling. So disclosure, I am a member of the Lawn Bowling Club and a past president. There are some issues with the backboards. And so there was a question as to whether backboard replacement needs to be brought forward. They're bolted to the concrete with some metal bolts, and there's some wear going on, and those metal bolts are protruding out from the backboard. And if a bowler bowls a hard, firm, fast bowl to break up the position of the bowls at the end of the green, and they hit that backboard and they hit one of those pieces of metal, it can chip the bowl. So during the US Open, we were actually putting some padding and mats across those so that if that happened, that the bowls weren't damaged. I'm not 100% certain, but if replacement or reattachment of those backboards goes ahead, there are some issues with the concrete and making a secure fix. Right. And so it rolls into a bigger thing. So I think that we need to have that added to the list or investigated for a possibility. And also...
Hold on, can we just put a pause on you for a moment? Because these are questions for the Properties Committee first. Properties Committee reviewed all of this, and they decided that could, I believe, you decided that could wait. Am I considered? I know that I did hear the same, I was at the meeting, and I heard if Nick were here, et cetera. So could you address that one before we have you complete?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. I think I thought the concrete replacement was already part of the capital improvement program, or it was in the R&R at one time. I don't know if it is still on there. Carl's nodding, so that's still on there. So this would really, I don't know if it would be, we want to do it under the capital item or add it to the concrete replacement that's already scheduled already on the capital improvements. I think that might be a better way to handle it.
I think when we start talking, directors, about the specifics of what's included in that particular item, I keep wanting to use first names, which is not a bad thing, but Director Turner, I think that would be the time at which the Properties Committee can, and we could all consider the scope of that and ask the staff at that point whether or not that is feasible and so forth. Is
Yeah,
that,
I looked at the minutes and the recording on the Properties Committee meeting, and they said that that wasn't added on this list here, coming forward on the recommendations, because it was believed that it was maybe on the list. I just want to make sure it is on the list. And it can, but that decision can be made later when the planning comes through. And the other item is lighting, which I know there has been communication about lawn bowling lighting and perhaps a lower cost option. And my concern there is that the lighting at lawn bowling was removed for safety reasons. And then in the planning I saw on the 5-year budgeting plan going out, it hasn't appeared for 2 years and it isn't on the list it wasn't on the list for the next 5, which for me, for something that was replaced for safety reasons, seems a little odd.
all right, Director Turner, we can turn that one over to the Properties Committee to investigate. Is that fair enough, Director Chapman?
Sure.
I think that's a fair, we always want all of our residents to be safe, so I think, and you have brought that up a few times during the course of the fall, so if you're okay with that, Director Chapman, you and the committee can take a look at that one and follow up for us.
We will.
Thank you.
So back to, were those, I did insert myself in the middle of your comments, so you wanted to know that your question was about the commercial kitchen, I believe, and none of did you have anything about the other two?
No.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director
I
Chapman.
think I don't know that the commercial, I think we were kind of undecided whether this should go immediately on the 26-27 capital project plan or whether it should go to master planning process. There was a little of both, but I think the majority wanted to see that looked at as soon as possible.
So again, that question will be whether or not the governing board wants to move forward on any one of these three. So thank you. And we'll go back to Director Schlemmer now next, I believe. And I'll go to this side of the table.
So Nick covered one of my questions. I won't repeat it. First, thank you to the Properties Committee for all the hard work and for these recommendations. I do have one question of clarification. Hopefully you can answer. You alluded to it from our tours over the last couple of days and the things that we saw. R.H. Johnson Courtyard renovation, can you give me some clarity as to what you define as the courtyard? Because that's a pretty expensive area that wraps all the way around the building. And where does it begin? Where does it end? What are you including in that?
Boy, we're looking at a rather large area from the entrance to admin all the way over to the part that overlooks the pool area, the entrance out here, and potentially adding something behind the social hall that would be more, have the aesthetics that we have looked at for a couple of days, that you give it some wow factor. I think one of the things we really noticed on the tours was just the features that they, outside features that they had, and the type of lawn furniture that they had, and the fire pits and all that kind of thing. So I think that's what the Properties Committee is looking at, and we're not looking at just a small little thing. We're looking at this as a major project.
Excellent. I was hoping that was going to be your answer, and I'm encouraged to hear that we're being very expansive in that, given what we learned. And folks, you'll see this at the end when we do this recap of the tours. You'll see what we're talking about. And I'm glad that you are including potentially beyond what is the traditional plaza, all the way over to the social hall and so forth. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Director Schlemmer. So I'm going to turn to your left, my right. Any director questions on this side of the table? Director Williams.
I just want to really support that we're finally looking at the issue at the tennis court. It's long overdue. It is an eyesore and a safety issue. So I really support that you guys are taking a look at that, because like you say, it had been on the list before and then got moved back a little. So the other two projects also I really support. I think it's wise to keep our eyes open and not be stuck in a rut that we're perfect as we are. We can always improve. So I think it's all very positive.
I think it's important for our residents to understand as well that what we're talking about here is not an approval of the items themselves, but rather how much do we want to continue to, do we want to add these for consideration for our evaluation in the next coming months? So thanks for that, Director Williams. Director Grom, anything? Okay, so back to, go ahead, Director Becknell.
I fully support the commercial kitchen idea. I think it's another amenity like a crafts club or quilting club or anything else that can be provided to the residents. And there's a lot of residents who would really enjoy being able to come. So when we talk about commercial kitchens, so people understand, it's really about putting together an amenity where you can actually teach cooking classes and you can bring in different instructors that actually teach you how to make something, like being on a cruise ship and going to the cooking class on the cruise ship. So I think that that's an amenity. I think it's very exciting. And even whether it's in part of the master plan or something we do this year, I think it would be fantastic for us to do the legwork to find out what would that cost or take or where would we go. I think it'd be great to have some thoughts about that. I apologize that I have no idea what platform tennis means. So if somebody could explain that to me, that would be great. And the courtyard renovation, I think, again, is part of the master plan as to how we want to update the look and feel of our community sort of overall, even though it's going to be done probably in phases. I think this courtyard out here could be one of the greatest drop-in locations for people to get together to meet, to have coffee, to play cards, do just a variety of things that you would like to do outdoors that right now all you can do is sit in a Adirondack chair and watch the wind blow by. So I think that's going to be part of the master plan. But I do support that commercial kitchen. But I wanted people to understand it's not so that we can cook giant meals to serve to the parties that clubs might be having. It's so that we can actually use it as an amenity to teach class.
And thanks for that. Again, remember what the board is considering here is these are things that we would therefore be looking for inclusion starting in July of 2026. So it means we don't have an infinite amount of resources. So things, as we evaluate in the coming months, some other things may have to move around, just so that we all are appreciative, right? And it's some work that would be on behalf of staff to look at evaluating costs and so forth between now and the first quarter of next year. Go ahead, Director Chatton.
Yeah, I would agree with Director Becknell's comments. The courtyard renovation, that was another one. We were trying to decide whether we wanted to get going on these or leave them for the master planning process. We believe that the courtyard renovation needs to be done now or as soon as possible. If we leave it for the master planning process, we won't be doing anything there for at least 3-4 years. So if we can look at this now. And the other thing that the Properties Committee was looking at is we need to get a professional designer to help us with these. I mean, we need to, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. But we just wanted to get started on it, so.
Right. The other thing too, and again, Director Becknell had asked, and I don't know if you can explain briefly, I'm not trying to say that you have to explain the sport, Director Chatton, but why it's important to renovate platform tennis in the view of your committee, why it's important to include that.
Well, it was on the list to be done, and I think one of the reasons that it originally was removed is there's 2 courts, and they're smaller than a regular tennis court. They're kind of between pickleball and tennis would be my understanding of what platform tennis is. And I don't know how many people play it, but we have those that do are real advocates for getting it fixed. I think there are those that wanted it on the master planning process because they're wondering if that's something we want to continue to spend money on. I believe, Carl might be able to comment, I think it was about $500,000 fully do those two courts.
Yeah, we'll defer to, although I know Carl could comment, well, maybe Stephen can cover, yeah.
Four courts.
Or is it 4 courts? Okay.
So,
Good to see Carl still hanging around.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to answer some of these questions. For clarification, there are 4 platform tennis courts. They are caged facilities for that specific sport. They are very similar in dimension to a pickleball court, except for they have 10+ feet of metal caging because the sport bounces balls off the wall. They are in ill repair. They were chosen not to be renovated during the 2017-18 overall tennis renovation. So they have sat and been used in their current condition for a few years now. It is a costly repair because it requires post-tension slabs, just like the tennis court renovation, to be poured on top of the asphalt with appropriate architectural engineering, steps. And I think the primary decision of it being removed from the current list of 26-27, which you did see originally, was discussions by staff that a study needs to be done through the master planning process on the relevance of how much platform tennis is being played versus other ideas that were positively brought up by members of the community, tennis players, Director Piaskowski about red ball. Red ball's a potential upcoming tennis sport. And obviously the elephant in the room is always pickleball. So the courts can only be repurposed for a sport that size or fully eliminated for just space, but I don't think that's the direction that we would want to go. We've had some positive bids, estimates for budgeting in case we get to a course of direction where it needs to be added on or implemented into master planning. And right now we're standing around the 300+ range as opposed to $500,000. And we just got that information this week, in fact. So I hope that helps.
thank you for that, Carl. Stephen, could you comment a little bit about, your team spends a lot of time on evaluating the capital budget as a part of this process that we go through each fall. Can you tell us a little bit about the decision, because this is, as you said in Properties Committee, this was a decision that really you made and that you spearheaded on behalf of the staff. Can you tell us a little bit about what went into that and what your thought processes were, please?
Sure, thank you, President Novello. So yes, it was on the list, and the thought process was basically at the time, particularly, we were looking at about $500,000. Yes, it's coming a little more favorable, even at $300,000, it's still a lot of money. So the rationale for removing it is that through the master planning process, the question comes up is where, so if we're going to do platform tennis, where does that still going to be at? I mean, could it be something that's over at the Kuntz area? Is it something that's taking some of the other courts or whatever? The point is, what you don't want to do, and I'll say this about all three of these things, is you don't want to do is make some changes and then out of the master plan find out that there was other things that we could have done or should have done through that planning process. So removing the platform tennis was really one of those ideas of, okay, well, whether or not it gets left where it's at or moved somewhere or what its future looks like really should be something that should be planned. And I realize it's been sitting for a while, and I get that, and I realize that means sitting for a while longer. I just would highly encourage the board to, we're going through this master planning process, to consider really all three of these things. Like, I'm fully in favor of the courtyard renovation. I think it's a great idea, but the question becomes, is there any opportunity within that courtyard to enclose areas to provide more additional space? So is it still a wide open courtyard? And I will say, as part of the cost of the master plan is for the consultants to come back with these ideas with costing. So that means that we don't have to spend additional money, because the reality is moving these things forward, a commercial kitchen or a courtyard renovation really means putting in planning dollars. Well, you're going to spend planning dollars that you actually are already spending through the master plan process. They're going to provide not only the recommendations, but they're going to provide potential plans and costing with that. So therefore, we're going to end up spending additional funding to do this outside of the master planning process. So certainly a board decision. It is a policy decision. I'm just suggesting that I realize people want these things and I want them. I like the idea of the commercial kitchen as well. The question is though, is there a demand for commercial kitchen cooking classes? We don't even know that yet. The concept, I like the concept, and I think there is probably a interest in that. Is there enough of interest? And then does it coincide with other renovations? And how does that work into potentially maybe, the social hall or those, where do you put it so that it's best utilized not only for cooking classes, but for other things? Again, these are all things that we don't want to look back and say, gosh, we should have waited, because if we had just done it this way, we would have known this would have been a better spot or whatever. So I know that was beyond the platform tennis, but I just wanted to also throw information in there about that as well, or the thought process for those things as well.
It's all part of what we have to consider. And again, we're not proposing to make any final determinations on whether to fund or not fund. This is a question of, do we want to go out and get bids and start to actually evaluate this in the coming year? So I think it's a matter of deciding as a board whether or not these are high enough priority, as we've done. When I think of, I'm not an expert in the sport either, but we all have to consider what's best for the association overall. The governing board made a really tough decision on deferring investment in the Kuntz area that's currently tennis and pickleball. It's also in desperate need of renovation. But we deferred that for the master plan to better understand what the demands were for all of our racket sports. That was the decision at the time. So I'm not saying this should or should not be in. I'm only saying it's a tough call that I believe belongs with the board in terms of whether or not we look to evaluate and renovate platform tennis in the coming year as originally planned, or whether we defer. So just reminding us that we've had that discussion in terms of other facilities as well. Yes.
Stephen, I would, just curious, because somebody's thrown out, if it goes on the master plan, it's 3 to 5 years. Is that something, the patio is what I'm reflecting on, because that was something that we saw on the tour that was very good.
Yeah, so thank you. That's a great question. So one of the items that we are proposing for the budget is to have planning dollars for master plan items. So the answer would be no, it would not be that far out, because if we put in, Cliff, what's the amount we're putting there? I forget. $100,000. We're putting $100,000 in planning money into the budget as a recommendation. That $100,000 is there as a placeholder. So when the master plan was completed around this time next year, or September or so next year, if through that planning process, the courtyard renovation rises to the top as a thing, and we have the recommendation that be done in there, we're going to have some planning dollars already set aside, but you're also going to have also within the final product some costing in there as well that will already give us an idea. So we're talking basically, you're not going to be any further behind than you would be right now, in the sense that if you put money aside for these things, the first thing you have to put aside is, I'm talking about the commercial kitchen now, or the renovation of the courtyard, is planning dollars to figure out, design dollars, basically.
Architecture and design.
Thank you, yes. So,
And design.
Yep, so those things, that's the only thing we're going to be able to put forward in this budget at this point as it is planning money. So you're going to be in this exact same place as far as fiscal years and moving forward as you are by letting it go through the master plan process as you would be to direct staff to put those planning dollars in right now.
Well, thank you for that, and thanks for the rationale for us to consider. Although we could move more quickly than that as we've done, we were evaluating last year a couple of other projects that had not been really fully scoped out. The master plan was one, technology was another. We ended up moving forward with master plan without a real solid notion of the scope. So along with planning dollars, if the board decided that we wanted to allocate money to actually do some portion of the implementation, I would postulate that we could do that.
I appreciate that, and $100,000 for planning items, when we get done with our master plan, there's going to be enough items on there to look at that are going to eat up way more than $100,000 in planning. So in my mind, to move ahead with planning dollars for any one of these projects, but the courtyard renovations in particular, to do that now, I think puts us ahead of the game, so. And these are the recommendations of our Properties Committee, so I
Right.
will forward them as that.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Director Forsey.
You know, though, with the master plan, if they provide architectural drawings and designers and so forth, that would help us to save some money, correct? Or do they charge you more because they're doing that?
So they'll provide costing. We're still gonna need planning dollars to actually get true architectural drawings and such. And Director Chatton, you're correct, other than the fact that the 100,000, there's only gonna be so much you could possibly put in, so many things you can do in the coming years. So yes, you're gonna have a whole a la carte menu of things that you're gonna wanna do, but the reality is you can only do so much in the coming years. So the 100,000, we believe will be sufficient enough, actually based on, okay, from the master plan, we know, let's say, for example, it comes out that a commercial kitchen's a great idea and it should be over at whatever, at Palm Ridge, and we're gonna put it here, and then they're gonna say, okay, based on that, we know that's gonna cost you whatever, $300,000 for a commercial kitchen. So we have enough, so now we have enough data to know we can put in $300,000 into the budget for the following fiscal year come this time next year. The planning dollars would be to actually get the architectural drawings to get that process started. And so, but we already know roughly what it's gonna be, but you're only gonna be able to do, depending on the size of the project, 1 or 2 projects a year going forward. I mean, because you're gonna have, again, way more projects than you will money for the next probably 10 years. And that's where the governing board has to make that policy decision on which ones to move forward on first.
Right, the priorities are up to us.
Yep.
And it goes, and the same thing, again, just to remind us all, right? It's wonderful to hear that we'll have some proposed, when we see this officially in January, that there'll be some planning dollars that are being proposed, and that would be a time at which the board could evaluate expanding that if we felt that we wanted to spend more time on, or more money in architecture, right? So we could, just knowing that there's something there, we could choose at that point to spend more. At question, though, directors, is not so much, it's a question of, do we move forward? Will we move forward with making we'll make a motion at our next meeting. If so, do we want to consider moving forward, having on these 3 items a full implementation or some portion of that in our fiscal year 27 budget? That's the question that we're here. That's the recommendation, as I understand it, from the Properties Committee, right? That all 3 of these items be not planned, but included for implementation next year. So that's the question that we're recommending, including these projects, as I understand it. Oh, please, Director Chatton, did I misunderstand?
No, I think you got it right. Just one last comment. I understand, I am looking forward to the master planning process. I think it's been overdue and it's really needed. But when I look at something like the courtyard renovation, are we going to take all our residents and have them tour all these other facilities that kind of wow you as you drive in, or look at their facilities and see what they look like and show how dated our facilities are? Our facilities are in incredibly good shape, maintained very well. But we, as a board, we did a tour and we see these things. I don't know during the master planning process how they are going to demonstrate that need to other people. So I would say that personally, I think that courtyard renovation should at least move forward, if nothing else. Thank you.
Director Schlemmer?
How about Joan?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jolene. Director Piaskowski first, and I apologize. And I have your name right in front of me, so yes.
So I'm going to just say, yes, the commercial kitchen, I think it would be great if we saved it for the master plan. I think that's something that the new coming generation, they're going to want cooking. I have 2 son-in-laws that are 40 and 45, and they love to cook. So I'm so surprised to this day that we do not have a cooking club, okay? That's one thing. Platform tennis renovation. One of the reasons the properties really want that to be done is because of what happened with Kuntz Camp. Kuntz Camp, or Kuntz Courtyard, they were, that was kicked down and kicked down and kicked down. So the platform tennis has not been touched since the original courts were put in. The chicken wire is so old that even if you play platform tennis, you can't even bounce the ball off the wire because the wire is so old, basically. The other thing is red ball is coming up as a tennis sport, and those courts are ideal for red ball. Red ball is half the tennis court, which is the platform court. And so that's just something that the Properties Committee really did not want the board, if this is up in R&R, does not want the board to get caught again saying, oh, we're going to push that off, and then it doesn't happen. And I understand it's going to be maybe in the master plan, but what are you going to do with those courts if you don't redo them? They're not going to turn into pickleball courts. They can't turn into meeting courts or meeting rooms because there's no AC or anything else there. So that's something that we really need to just do so we don't kick the can down the road. And then the courtyard renovation. Mr. Chatton is totally correct. We saw all these beautiful courtyards, right, that we do not have. Now, if we decide to do that as a board and not wait for the master plan, when we go and do it, we need to let them know what we're also thinking about behind the social hall, right? And making that a courtyard where people can be, where our residents can use it. We do not have a space like that right now. And we all, in our tours in the last 2 days, we're all goo goo gaga over the areas that the other residents in the other communities had. So again, I understand $100,000 for planning, but that's not a lot of money. And to get an interior design person in there to help us do that, and then you're also going to need a landscaping designer because that's part of it all, right? Because we have these boxes with plants and everything else. I mean, you just can't get an interior design person just for furniture. You need also a landscaping designer. So, if anything else, we should put money in our budget for the courtyard renovation. We know that has to get done. That's enough.
Thanks, Director Piaskowski, for weighing in. Sorry that that I forgot to ask. So, Director Schlemmer?
Thank you, President Novello. I just want to make sure I understand the process, because we've gotten into a pretty deep discussion about the merits of each of these and weighing them against the master plan. All very good comments and all very good thoughts and all very good points. Today, our only question, though, is do we want to move these onto the capital budget consideration list for the next budgeting period?
Correct. That's
And
what
then-
that's the recommendation of our.
And then at that point, once we have that full list together, then we can have the meritorious discussion around whether or not they should remain on the list and then actually become part of our budget. So today, we're not committing to anything other
Correct.
than whether or not at the next meeting, we want to have these voted on to move onto a list for more detailed and further consideration. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. The process, Director Schlemmer, is that we're looking here at, we have our capital improvement project budget and line items that we've been looking at for several months. Properties Committee during their tours came up with several ideas, and granted, a little bit late, but still, they're forwarding to us for recommendation 3 items that should be added into our evaluation for the fiscal year 27 budget, and these are the 3. And yes, so it's literally, at this point, it's similar to all the work that went on by our various committees and recommendations we received for the ARC implementation. That was not an approval to proceed. It was literally recommendations to us as a board that we include that in the capital project budget, which it is, right? So just so we understand the process. And before I get to you, Director Turner, just also wanted to add for Director Piaskowski and for others who have asked, we have so many clubs and they do so many wonderful things. And I could be misstating because there could be other clubs that do this, but one of our crafting clubs is called Zymergy. Zymergy is known for being the winemaking, beer-making club, but they've also expanded their crafting to include other forms of cooking because they have a kitchen. It's not a commercial kitchen, but they do have a kitchen facility as a part of that club by their nature, the nature of the work that they do. So they have started offering cooking classes, and the way that they do that is just putting everything together in assembly, and then the club members who participate take those projects home and actually cook them at home. So they're not cooking in front of everyone, but rather the way that they do this is showing folks how to put together a recipe and then giving directions on how they'd cook it at home. Just wanted you to know from a club perspective, if there's anybody out there watching who's interested, that's one, and there may be others. Director Turner?
Yeah, thank you. That's one of the points I was just about to make, is that the setup you need for a cooking class is not a commercial kitchen. We saw a commercial kitchen on our tours, and that was an association that provides banqueting services. So when it's all their charter clubs' Christmas parties are catered and the food is cooked by staff in the commercial kitchen. They also use those banqueting services when it comes to rentals for weddings and celebrations, even by outside people who don't even live there. They rent their banqueting space out to anybody who comes along, and they will provide those banqueting and services using a commercial kitchen. If you imagine 12 or 24 people being taught how to prepare a meal, you need 12 workstations, 12 hot plates, 12 sinks. You don't need a commercial kitchen. I think that's something we need to bear in mind when we're working through this, which is why I think it needs to be a long-term plan and not something that we do immediately.
Okay. And again, remember, the process here is we would need to be able to understand and guide the staff, what is it that we're asking to be added to the budget, so that they would be able to come back to us with a proposal or something, a line item. Director Forsey, you had a question, I believe.
You know, with the tour, I want to say for myself, I came back realizing how great we have it here at Sun City West. But what I did notice, and that's kind of why we're talking about the patio, is there was one particular resort that we went to that you felt like almost every sort of room that was sort of set up, you could just sit down and relax or visit with a friend or have a coffee. And we thought, you know, that is something that we're kind of lacking. So I just want people to know, by far, Sun City West has far more and is farther ahead than these other places, but we're just looking at some things we could add that would maybe add to where if people are weighing a decision where to buy, then they would see we're kind of at that point too.
Thanks, Director Forsey. And again, back to the tactical matter of the fact that we have three proposed things to add to our fiscal year 27 budget. And the governing board needs to decide whether we move those forward or make a motion next week to move those forward onto the plan. So just trying to keep, I understand, and we're all very excited, and you'll hear more about it, about our tours and what we've seen. We're all very excited for the future, but this is not items necessarily, a few of these are not items that would be long-term. Again, we have three items that all three are being proposed for implementation, not design, implementation in 27. So that's that's the question for us. Do we want to go forward and put some dollars aside? And how will we evaluate that and budget for those in time to be considering those in January? Okay, so before we decide by vote and by consensus to move that forward for a vote next week, want to see if there are any other questions or comments about putting these three items into our 26-27 budget, the entire item. Any questions or comments about that? I see that. I'm looking to directors first. Thank you. Director Turner? Still nothing? Okay, then, so now we can turn to resident questions or comments. So we have a resident at the podium who's been waiting patiently. And if you're online and you have questions, you can type those in as well.
Good morning. Lynn Kellis, 129120. Excuse me. First off, I'd like to say that I think Nick hit spot on regarding the commercial kitchen. It definitely needs to be looked at for use. If you're going to use it for classes, you're going to need several stations, and I really feel that that would be best going forward in the master plan. Regarding R.H. Johnson Courtyard, I think that's a really important issue, and Sandra, you just brought up exactly what was on my mind. I had a group of friends here from Oregon, which is where I'm from, and we have several of our group from Oregon live here now, and they have come down 2 or 3 times and now came down to make the final decision where they're going to live, and it's not going to be Sun City West. They chose across the street because of what a nice layout they have in the courtyard. They have live music, they've got a coffee bar, they've got ice cream, they've got a lot of the things that they wanted. As you said, I think Christine mentioned that people can sit down as a group and just chat and have a good time. And I think that's really important in our community. And I would hope that you really consider doing that sooner than later. And in regards to the platform tennis, I guess I'm a little bit held back, not because I don't want it done, something needs to be done with it. However, if we don't know that it is going to be used for platform tennis or for red ball or what the interest is, I hate to see us putting the money into something that we haven't done the study on first to see if it's viable. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thanks for the comments as well. I think, again, I don't see any other questions coming in yet from our online participants. So directors, that question for us is whether or not we want to put this to a motion next week, all 3, some components of that. So I'm looking for some input or consensus from the directors on what's the appetite to have all 3. We can make the decision next week, but it would just be easier to be able to formulate this in advance. So I'll take a quick poll. I believe, I'm going to start on this side. Director Williams, I believe you had said you're in favor of all, just generally speaking. We're not making a vote here. Just give me an idea, all 3 or some component, right?
Can I sneak in here?
Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. We did have another question. I didn't see you come up earlier. So apologies, Director Williams. We'll come back to you in a moment.
Okay, my name's Paul Burrier, 113848. And I guess I'd like that you clarified commercial kitchen. When I first sat down here, first I'd heard about it. That's kind of what's going on. What is that? And I've heard a couple of definitions, and I kind of go along with Mr. Turner. I won't call you Nick, Mr. Turner. But then I heard about the woman mentioned the people from Oregon. And I'm sitting here reeling. I like what Sandy said. I've got first names. I'm a first name person.
That's quite all right. I do the same thing.
I like what
Mr.
she
Burrier.
said. And then I realized my wife's a realtor. And you can't imagine how many people move from what it's called, the Grand, come to Sun City West for all the amenities we have. And I'm thinking about your courtyard. I looked at that, it's like your courtyard that you have at Kuntz. It's kind of open, a lot of chairs, and people can come and sit and talk. I didn't see, it's kind of like we're overlooking Kuntz to do something new here at the main area. But I just got to say, a lot of people move from the Grand to here. You don't see many people moving from here to the Grand. It's a only comment.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Director Williams. I just want to make one more comment. I just want to clarify. Listen, I am 1,000% in favor, and I think the courtyard area is ripe for renovation into something bigger and grander. What I will caution the board is, you don't want to box yourself in. I want to think bigger. So what that looks like to me, in my mind, is there an opportunity to create maybe a little stage out there? And so you can have bands. Is there an opportunity to have a area that is able to open and close for a bar area? One of the things I'm looking at is how do we expand our footprint of where we can sell beer and wine? Is there an opportunity to create a coffee bar extension out there? So to me, it's beyond just, and I love the idea of fire pits or fireplaces and the great furniture and all that. And I think Director Piaskowski kind of mentioned a little bit, even the additional patio. I mean, is there ways to expand things to, again, make it look even grander? What I don't want is to see us move in a direction where we do something with that and then again look back and say, oh, or through the outcome of the master plan, say, oh, there was all these other opportunities we could have done with it as well. Again, I'm super excited for the opportunities that are going to come up, and I agree with what that could look like, and I certainly agree with that is probably the first place that people that are looking are going to see is in those areas and creating that space. I just want to really think bigger than even just fire pits and nice furniture. So just throwing that out there for consideration.
No, thank you. And again, from my perspective as well, I'm so excited about the possibilities that we started to explore, that we've been discussing. But again, a question right now is whether or not we want to implement all three of these items or any of these items, implement them in total, or consider that, I should say, because we're not deciding to implement now. We're not just making a decision on the budget now, but rather do we include these for consideration? And how we balance that budget will be a big part. That budget we can't afford to spend everything all at once. So again, decisions that we would be making later on in the year, not to be made now. This is literally just need some idea from each of you if there's an appetite for any or all three of these items in total to be costed out, included in the CIP process. That's what we're looking to do today, not to decide on whether or not to move forward. So with that, I believe, I started with you, Director Williams, because of your closeness to this, and you had already said that you had thought this through. So if you wouldn't mind offering your thoughts first.
I fully support moving all three of them forward for a vote.
On your microphone. I'm sorry. Could you turn your microphone on? I'm sorry. Was it on?
I fully support moving
All three
of them.
Cool. And Director Grom?
I'd like to see all three move forward.
Okay. What do you think, Director Forsey?
I say yes to all three. We can research it.
All right. Well, and again, this is not a vote to proceed. It's literally, do we move this to a vote next week? So, Director Chatton, I think I know where you are, but why don't you weigh in, please?
I'm in favor of moving all three forward. I think we should change the terminology to a commercial/teaching kitchen.
If that's the intention of your committee, then by all means.
I'm in agreement with all three items.
Okay. And this is just to include them. We'll have a vote next week. So, Director Schlemmer?
I agree with Director Chatton's thoughts on the terminology. Our committee has spoken. I believe we should consider all three of them for inclusion into the proposal and consideration for the budget.
Director Turner?
Yes, I would like the vote to be, are these included in the list for 26, 27, or are these moved to the master plan?
Yeah, that's the vote we'll do next week.
Yeah, okay, then yes, move forward.
And Director Piaskowski?
Yes, move all of them forward for next
Okay.
week.
So it's pretty clear that, we want to see these at least to evaluate next week. So next week, the vote will be master plan or 27, fiscal year 27 budget. So we'll put that onto the agenda for next week's regular meeting. So with this, I'm going to need to move the agenda around slightly with apologies to Director Chatton and his team. I know that you're next up, but our elections chairperson is on a bit of a time schedule today. So I'd like to move the item 3.07. We'll talk about that next. It's a very brief item, and each of us have a handout. Director Piaskowski, we'll make sure that you get these materials as soon as possible. So we have a hard copy handout because we don't want to post these yet. But these are the items that, per our policies, the governing board will vote next week to move forward on, or not, right? So we have these to look at. So the chairperson of our elections committee, Kathy Estes, will tell us what we're looking at.
Thank you very much. So what you have in front of you are 3 different packets. One is the petitioner's packet. The second one is the candidate orientation. And the third one is the actual election guide. So the committee has been working on all 3 of those packets to try to simplify them, to clarify the terminology, so that everybody understands exactly what the rules are and what the process is. So the actual election guide is the one that explains exactly what happens on election day. It's really just a lot of the process of who does what, who gets, who greets people at the door, who verifies membership, just the detail of the election part of it. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them for you if I can.
Okay. And we recognize, thank you so much to you and your committee, Kathy, really appreciate it. Directors, this is the first time that most of us are actually seeing these materials. So this is an opportunity for us you have them. And again, Director Piaskowski, we need to make sure that you can get those in your hand. We'll email them to you if necessary. Because next, with the board's consensus, we'll actually have this vote next week. Once we've had a chance to read the materials, we may have more questions. Okay. But are there any general questions about the process that the committee has gone through to create these materials, or anything else for Kathy at this time? Director Piaskowski, you don't even have the materials in front of you, but I'm going to ask you if you had any questions first, so I don't forget.
I'll wait till I see them.
Okay.
If I have any questions, I can reach out.
Yes, well, we'll have the opportunity to ask questions in detail next week before we actually have a vote. Yes, Director Becknell?
Hi, Kathy. I was just curious, none of these are redlined. So these documents existed in some format previously.
They did.
And then you've done a wonderful job of building a new document. Were there things that were taken out specifically, or things, or new regulations or rules that were put in? Because there's no redlining, so I'm having a little bit of a hard time, differentiating between last year and this year.
Okay. Well, there were a lot of red lines when the committee was working on it. So I would say there's no real content change. We haven't changed any rules. Most everything is specified in the bylaws and in the policies. So we just tried to clarify it and make it clear to candidates what they can and cannot do, where they can petition, where they can campaign, things like that. We didn't change any bylaws, we didn't change any policies.
So this is a matter of us, reading all 3 documents and determining for ourselves, right? And if we needed those, Kathy, if we wanted to review the specifics of which areas changed, could we reach out to you and your committee?
Absolutely. I can give you copies of the 2025 documents.
Okay, thank you. As a reminder for residents as well, the elections process is still, nominations are still open, right? So packets are still available. They just need to be certified and turned in. The packet would include those petitioner packets as well as candidate bio that needs to be turned in by the first business day in January, which is January 2nd. So clock is a ticking if you're thinking of doing this. Yeah, exactly. But that's what we're looking at here. These are the items that would then be distributed to the certified candidates in January and kicked off. One of the questions that has come to me from other residents as well, do we yet have the dates? Forgive me, I could look it up, but Do we have the dates yet for things like the candidate forums and so forth? Have those been defined and publicized?
Yes, they are. They are actually in the packets that you have.
Right.
And I believe that they have been posted as well.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Any other questions for Kathy before we release her to the rest of her life
I
today?
have a party to go to, Silvercraft.
Any questions from our residents? And I see none online. Thank you so much for bringing this to us. And again, next, at our regular meeting next week, we'll actually be voting on these. So we'll take these and read them now. Directors, if you do need a red line or want to see the specific red lines, I'll coordinate on behalf of Kathy, but you can email me or email Kathy directly. Just let me know so that we don't inundate you and we can get those. Thanks. So now we'll jump back to agenda that's on our agenda item 3.04. We have some policy reviews that have come out as well from our hardworking Properties Committee. Director Chatton, it's back to you.
Well, I'd like to make this quick, but who knows? We have quite a few policies that we looked at and made some changes to. We had a working group of myself and Holly McCurdy and Suzanne Jones. I think the important part was when we had our meetings, we had staff there also. Sabrina, Carl, Russ, Nick even showed up for one of them because he likes to nitpick on some of these policies, and we appreciate that. So anyway, there are no changes to these policies that are going to meet with any resistance from those people who are implementing those policies as far as staff goes. So they are redlined. There are a lot of changes. Policy FA01, nothing major. You can look at every one of these policies has a change log in the back that for every red line or every change that has been made, there is an explanation there as to why it was done. And we credit Holly McCurdy, who was our scribe for all of this. Raise your hand, Holly, take credit. She was a scribe for all of this and did an awful lot of work. So are any particular questions on FA01? Oh, well, here we got Cliff has got a comment.
I wasn't part of the operations team. The only clarification or thing I think is not needed in there is the major repair of a facility. I'm just curious why that was put in there, because the policies above it that refer to our capital policies and our procurement policies already define what a capital project is. And our CR forms also define the thresholds, the dollar amount thresholds of what has to be requested and how it has to be requested. And that description of a major repair of a facility is in none of them. So you're creating a new definition where it doesn't exist in any of those other policies and conflicts by nature with the policies themselves. So that's the only issue I have with the changes on this policy.
So Director Chatton, why, or to your committee, why is this definition important to add now, in your view?
Well, the major repair was part of the original policy. It's not a major change. 1.0 purpose, the purpose of this policy is to formalize the capital project planning process for major repair, renovation, repurposing, elimination. So it was in there already.
It wasn't a criteria. It was just defining the purpose of the policy.
Well, I see you're talking about using it as a criteria.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would actually take it out of there too, and I don't think it should be in there at all, because the dollar amount and the useful life and all that determine how it's going to be, if it's going to be a capital project or not, which is defined in the financial policies. So the fact that it's 25,000 and calling it a major repair doesn't really affect anything, because if it's 5,000, over 5,000, 5,000 or higher, or 5 years useful life or higher, it's a capital item. If it's not both of those, then it's an expense item. But there's also the CR forms. So the CR forms also determine how the request has to be made for that item, which have their own rules. So anyway, it just conflicts with those items. So that's the only, again, I know she may want to comment on it.
You'll need to come to the microphone. Thank you, Holly, I'm sorry. So the working group, I don't know if Holly was the leader of the working group, but one of the working group members and leaders will be here to ask the questions that drove the inclusion of major repair. So go ahead, Holly.
So I just have some questions because I would be revising this. So do you have an issue with the note, or do you have an issue with A? And explain to me how, because major repair of a facility, like we were talking about platform tennis, that is on the capital project. That is a criteria for the capital project planning process. I'm just looking for clarification.
Sure. So the guiding light is our policies and our bylaws, and those determine what type of project it's going to be, whether it's a capital item or whether it requires a CR 13 or a 13A. That's already defined. So you're defining something, or you're creating a criteria that doesn't exist in our policies or our RMPs by adding a criteria there of a major repair of a facility and then defining it as 25,000 or more. I would just take A and take the note out.
And then, but leave it up in the purpose.
You can leave it in the purpose if you want. I'd probably take it out of there too, but that's fine. You can leave it up there just to help talk about what the purpose of this policy is. But you're referring to all of the policies that determine what a project is and how it has to be requested, and how it has to be reserved, and how it has to be booked on the fixed assets already. It's just superfluous. It's just, again, it's not needed in this policy at all.
Explain to me
Holly, could you come up to a microphone so that they can hear you at home?
Explain to me how, like, the platform tennis, right, is a repair.
Right.
So how is that major repair? Right. How is that major repair not part of, where is it in the whole process? It's in the bylaw, you're saying?
Yeah, so the platform tennis is on the reserve study. It's already on as a capital project because of the value and the lifing of it. You can call it a major repair if you want, but
It could also be a renovation.
it could be renovation, it could be a lot of things, but
Okay.
but that criteria that you're adding there, it leads to believe that has to be something that's part of the capital project planning process. And we have plenty of items that are less than 25,000 that are part of the capital
Okay.
planning
So I remove
project.
the note, remove A. And
Yeah.
remove
If
major
the,
repair.
if the board agrees and the committee agrees. So anybody have any directors, and I'll look to you especially, Director Becknell as the treasurer and the person who chairs our finance. Any issues with what our CFO, Cliff Schwan, has said here?
No, I think what Cliff is saying is absolutely correct, that is a bit redundant and actually in conflict with other areas in our financial procurement and other items. So,
Okay.
you know, I personally, every week, get the privilege of seeing every check that was written by the Sun City West Finance Office, and I have a description of what the item was for, if it was a capital project, if it's an ongoing project, those kinds of things. So I think that that is redundant to our
Okay.
current process.
So, and it would be, it's okay from the working group chair to, does it change your intention? No. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. And for those who couldn't hear, Holly said she was just clarifying. So thank you. And she was agreeing. So Director Chatton, that's one change. Any others on FA01? Any other comments or concerns? And again, today we're looking at the red lines. And next week, assuming that we agree to move them forward, we'll have the vote. Oh, apologies. I think we have a new nickname, Director Turner. Director Turner, yes?
You may be pleased to hear there are some changes in some policies I don't have a comment on. But this one, I notice in two things. First of all, in 3.1, the general manager will review each request for feasibility and completeness and will forward viable requests for further consideration by September 1st. There's a possibility that the governing board next week may vote to include 3 items, and that will be the middle of December. So we either need to change that date, or we need to modify the process in some way, because if all the things from the committees need to be with the general manager for him to make his decisions by September 1st, that's going to be after the property tours.
Very true.
And so I think we need to think about the process, and maybe we have something by September 1st, and then we maybe have a few more added in a little bit later. But that's just my concern there.
If the property tours are a huge value to the committee and to us as a governing board, I believe. So this would preclude those inputs, as you were saying, right? The September 1st. So I think that's a valid point. What did your committee consider that, Director Chatton?
Well, we looked at that, but I think outside of the property tours and the property committee recommending items, they really do want everything done by September 1st. So I don't know what the proper terminology would be to say, except for property committee recommendations, or?
Well, the blue highlighted items explicitly says originating from the governing board, standing committees, or owner members, right? So that would be the area to.
And this is a recommendation from a standing committee in December.
Right, so if we want to include those property tours, the date September 1st, putting aside what we're evaluating for next week, for the moment, right? I'm just saying the property tours themselves will always take place after September 1st. So do we want to change that specific date or change the verbiage that says, originating from, removing the originating from standing committees and governing board from that? And then, or change the date to November 1st or some other date.
I'm looking at the flow chart, and it has differing dates in there too.
Yeah, that was my second comment, was that the flow chart, which is just referenced here as the capital project planning process, it's a document that belongs to the general manager and his staff. It's nothing to do with us. It's just how they implement the policy.
Yeah.
But I would like to see some little changes of terminology in there. I don't, I think the chart works. I don't have a problem with that. It's just that when it comes to these items coming forward to committees for their consideration, it uses terms like review, engagement, and introduction. It doesn't say, and make recommendation. So according to that flow chart, it doesn't say when the standing committees would make their recommendations. I just think that needs adding to the appropriate boxes. It doesn't change the flow or anything. And so we could make that request to the general manager.
Well, let's not talk, again, we're talking about the what, not the how. The flow chart is the how. So we can make the request, right?
Yeah, the what is that these committees make their recommendations on new capital projects by a certain date and
Right.
by the overall capital budget and the expensive items by another date. That's not in a policy anywhere, and it's also not in the flow chart, so it needs to be somewhere.
Look to you, Carl.
Yeah, I can't help but to share a little history here. The intent in this policy is to get work done. So we do have a few defining dates in our project planning process. I'll request by July 1st so that we have some time over the summer while you're at break and we're doing our work and trying to get bids and ideas ready for September 1st. This is the opportunity for the general manager to say, no, this just doesn't fit in staff's overview of the whole entire process, from the CFO and understanding what our fully funded balance is, all those financial decisions. And this just gives us that kind of hard date that says, we've made our determination, this is what that original capital project list looks like for that fiscal year, and we move forward. Now, I can tell you after 8.5 years, like our earlier discussion, if the governing board says, we need something brought up and added to that list, there's never been no road gap to that. You are the governing board.
Yeah.
But this does define, and its purpose is that the big picture of the work is defined by September 1st. That list gives Stephen the opportunity to look it over, Cliff to look it over, the capital project manager to be prepared for those September starting meetings. And then from those meetings, from the properties tours, September, October, and November, that list changes, and then there is the hard gap policy that list gets presented to the general manager December 1st.
Right.
So that's the intent of this.
No, and thanks for the clarification as well. I think the challenge, because Director Turner is accurate, and we've had many conversations as a board, and specifically Director Turner and I, about the timing and because the intention is one thing, the words in our policies don't always align to that intention. So that I believe it's not so much the intentions, things seem to be working pretty well. We don't want to box ourselves in for the future with a policy that says, well, everything is got to be done by September 1st, and it creates a wonderful list that our properties committee uses and all participants use as we walk around as well. It's a great it works really well. I think it's just aligning the intentions with the words. Director Chatton, go ahead.
My final comment would be, over those years that I have had the privilege to, follow these rules, when I started here, the project planning process was so outdated that we made a revised project planning process, and that's what we've been following to date.
Right.
But over the years, the governing board's processes and requests to us staff, last year's president asked Cliff and I and the general manager at the time to make an improvement. Now, we made that improvement even though we didn't change the language in these policies. Okay? Thank you.
And I was part of that as last year's treasurer and so forth. So I really do think it works, and it works well. Right now, I think we're grappling with the words that would back up the intention. Director Chatton, I think you had your hand raised a moment ago.
Thank you. The way I look at this is this policy works fine just the way it is. Anything that is presented after September 1st is an anomaly and has to be approved by the entire board. So I don't know why it would have to definitely be conform to the policy. The board has the right to do whatever it wants when it comes to the capital planning process. So I would suggest we make the change to major repair of a facility, but leave the rest of it for now until somebody can come up with a better idea, I guess.
Well, I think after this season's discussions of capital items, certainly the there might be some tweaks or improvements to the process that we could make to make it more efficient so that there are fewer surprises for the staff going forward. I think that would be fair.
Well, that's
But-
why we had staff at our meetings, so they could weigh in and help us
Absolutely.
determine what's the best way to do it.
And that's not intended, by the way, my comment about a surprise was not intended as a criticism at all. I'm really grateful for the fact that the staff has been so amenable, that all the committee members and governing board have been so attentive and focused in, we want to do the right thing. So none of this is bad at all. We just want to align our intentions with our words. So I'm okay with proceeding, but I know that we've had a couple of concerns about the date. So Director Chatton, if I'm hearing you, you're fine with the other change about major repair, would like to go forward with the rest of the verbiage as is.
Yes.
Directors, are we okay moving this one forward to a vote next week? Yes. Any objections? Great, let's move on to
FAO2.
FAO2.
FAO2, you will see that there are pages added to this. And the reason for that is, outside of what is also in the log, is that we had two other policies, FAO7 and FA10, which basically repeated what was in the guidelines, which is a link at the end of this policy. That guidelines link, none of the stuff in the guidelines was a policy. So we incorporated FAO7 and FA10 into FAO2 to create a single, more comprehensive policy.
So the intention here for, just to make sure that we're all aware, included in this recommendation is combining 3 policies into one.
Correct.
So 7 and 10 would be, I'm going to turn around and look at Karen, retired? Is that retired? All right, so that's part of the recommendation as well.
Correct.
Well, speaking as one director, I am very pleased to see simplification and consolidation. I'm always about that. As I heard from your meetings thus far, the committee didn't seem to make content changes, but rather consolidation. We can see where there were a few things that were changed by strikeout. Do I have that right, Director Chatton?
That would be correct.
So directors, comments, concerns, and by the way, Director Piaskowski, I apologize. I didn't ask you explicitly about FAO1. As a member of the Properties Committee, I presume that you were okay moving that one forward, but please, we had consensus to move it forward to a vote next week, so if I'm incorrect, just speak up. We'll start with you, though, on this one for FAO2. Again, I know that you're part of the committee, but any concerns or questions about the consolidation that's being proposed?
No.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Schlemmer.
Just a very quick question. You mentioned this will retire. I hope I'm 7 and 10. Does it also retire? I assume the answer is yes, the guidelines that are referred to in, they're struck out, they're red line through. I'm assuming those guidelines no longer need to exist.
The guidelines will still exist. They're operational guidelines, not policy.
Okay, but it would make them moot, effectively?
Pretty much.
Okay, so then the operations could have the decision as to whether they still need to exist.
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And again, as I heard at the committee meetings, the advisors, the staff advisors to facilities, and you have 3, no one had an issue with the content that was being proposed here.
That would be correct.
Any other concerns? Any objections to moving this to a vote next week? And that would be inclusive. I'll work with our parliamentarian as well as with Karen Ropkin about formulating the motion or motions to be made, because I believe there might be some separate motions to retire those policies. Moving on, Director Chatton, you're on a roll.
Okay. looking at policy FAO5, smoke-free environment. Basically, there were some changes in definitions and additions to make sure that we included Arizona statutes such as 36-601.01, which is a Smoke-Free Arizona Act that wasn't previously referred to. It talks about the things that aren't allowed, which it did previously also. But the odor-free part was a new definition because we have people in our community that are allergic to many different types of odors. And some of the aerosols that we were using in the bathrooms were causing problems. So we did create this defining what odor-free was, so we can take care of that. And I know Sabrina has already changed, I think, not all of them, most of those to odor-free type vapors that we are using there. And let's see, what else was there? Oh, and that it also I'd mentioned that it talks about no smoking or vaping signs on 3.4 shall be posted at all entrances, pool gates, blah, blah, blah. I think Russ has already done that on all our facilities, so that was taken care of. Outside of that, if there's any questions on smoke-free, odor-free environment?
Director Graham.
Thank you. You've made a good point here. You're calling it, I mean, the title alone is smoke-free environment, but the goal here is smoke-free and odor-free. However, looking throughout the entire policy, nothing addresses any steps being taken to maintain things as odor-free, such as possibly defining cleaning chemicals will be used that are odor-free, or the fact that we will attempt to maintain operating ventilation systems which will help support an odor-free environment. I mean, it seems like this whole policy is strictly geared towards smoke-free, and it doesn't even mention odor-free other than in the first 1.0.
I understand the question. I guess our thought was, we're talking operations. Once we've defined what's smoke-free and odor-free are, then it's up to our operations to determine the process for ensuring that we are smoke-free and odor-free.
That's right.
That'd be my comment.
And absolutely, this is defining the what, and our team will define how it's implemented in accordance with the entire definition, including odor-free. And it sounds, by what I've heard in your committee, the operations team really already does that. This just puts it adds the phrases of odor-free and so forth to the definition. So I hope did that answer your question, Director Graham?
No, it actually doesn't.
Restate.
If we're going to put a policy in place, the policy ought to be somewhat specific as to what these odor-free steps would be, such as using odor-free chemicals or something along that lines, because you're very clear here in the smoke-free part of this, and I trust that, like you said, staff is already doing these things, but it's incumbent that it be in the policy that somewhat mandates these things be done. That's the purpose of the policy, to ensure that staff does use odor-free chemicals, or the fact that we do keep our ventilation systems working. I mean, that's, to me, what a policy does. It sets the tone for what then is implemented by the operational people.
Well, I think we heard Director Chatton's response. Stephen, do you have anything?
Honestly, I agree with you, Director Grom. Because when you define in a policy, or anywhere, if you're gonna have a definition, the definition should be stated somewhere in the policy. So even as something as, because to your point, I agree it should be an operational decision, but something to the effect of the association shall, wherever possible, maintain an odor-free environment. That's the what, that's what you're wanting us to do. The how then is, I mean, I don't think it should go into the level that you're talking about as, you know, chemicals and things like that. But you basically have a definition that's hanging out there with no, that's not being used anywhere other than defining it. So there should be some reference to that definition. I would agree with that.
And it would be somewhere in the section 3, therefore?
Correct, yes, or its own, yeah, section 3, I'm sorry, yes.
Director Chatton, what do you say?
Well, our working group can certainly look at it. I still, when I look at the definition of odor-free, we define odor-free as the absence of any detectable smoke, vapor, aerosol odor from the tobacco, marijuana, nicotine, e-cigarettes, or vaping products, regardless of subjective perception. When I see that that's the definition of odor-free, then to me, just me, it's still just up to operations to determine how we maintain that odor-free. I don't personally see any reason for giving direction in the policy, but if you want the working group to look at it again, we can certainly involve staff and see how that should be done.
Well, it's really, I think at this point it would be up to the, we've heard our general manager weigh in that it is something that we've heard, you know, from Director Grom. General manager agrees with Director Grom. So, directors, do we want to send this one back to the Properties Committee for evaluation on where that would be included? So any objections to send it, let me phrase it a little bit more, any objections to us sending this one back to the committee so that they could come back with a response in January? Yes, Director Becknell?
I think it's well written. I think that if they look at the paragraph that identifies or discusses odor-free, right now it's very focused on tobacco, marijuana, nicotine, e-cigarettes, and so on. So, you know, when it says or aerosol odor, it then goes on to define, you know,
Right.
different kinds of smoke-related kinds of products. If in that paragraph they could just incorporate odors linked with cleaning supplies, somehow, whatever the narrative would be, I think that would complete it, just because that paragraph got a little bit specific about being all about tobacco.
Which paragraph again by number?
It's definitions.
Definitions,
It's
yes.
definitions of where they define odor-free.
Yes.
They could just somehow incorporate into that paragraph cleaning products or other aerosol related products, not just nicotine kind of things. Yeah, because it's very specific. It gets very specific about tobacco and
Right.
vaping and that kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
just somehow add the verbiage of cleaning products. I'm sure there's
Something like that. And-
there's better wordsmithing than that, but yeah.
And I think for your consideration as well, to build on that, Director Chatton, for your team's consideration, you can look at the paragraph 3.2 and probably include the phrase odor-free or some reference to it. That might be something that would help. Go ahead. First, do you want to, for
I just want to
Holly?
clarify something that would probably stop this discussion. This is the smoke-free policy. This is not an odor-free policy. So originally, when we were looking at this, Suzanne brought that up because of the smell in the bathroom. And we had the discussion where this is specifically smoke-free. right? If we wanted to create another policy that was the things in the bathroom, the chemical scents, that stuff would be a different policy than the smoke-free policy. So this is just defining odor
Fair.
as a smoking. Okay.
Holly, while you're standing there, so the putting odor-free in the definitions section was just to lay that, again, within this whole atmosphere of smoking, the odor-free smoking is what you're referring to here,
Right,
really?
right,
Gotcha.
because you can see in the red line, it was actually up in the first part. So we just defined it for this policy as related to
Understood.
smoking.
Thank you for
Only.
clarifying.
Yep.
So with that clarification, and thank you very much, Holly, for that. For Director Grom, do you still propose that we modify the policy based on that clarification?
Well, then if odor in this case means odors from smoke-free, then I agree. It's a smoke-free policy, but then what you brought up, we do need to generate a new policy on odors, because I was at that meeting and I remember the discussion because, excuse me, in some cases, the actual air fresheners that we use in some of our restrooms and things cause allergic reactions to people. So in that case, I would be okay with this, but I guess then we now need a new policy which would go a bit more into depth as to possibly eliminating certain cleaning chemicals that we know would be cause allergic reactions to our
Yeah.
residents.
And if that is a determination made by the Properties Committee, you'll make that recommendation along with a new policy. If that is a recommendation, you'll come back with that, correct? Director Chatton, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Because that was, creating an odor-free policy is not something that you guys took on in this year. So if you wanted to consider that, that's something that your committee would have to consider and come back to us with a proposal if such a policy was to be created.
Yeah, I'm still, this whole odor-free thing to me is still, before I create a whole new policy, I'd probably scratch the odor-free definition. I would be in favor of just adding cleaning products to the odor-free definition. I can't imagine any policy that's strictly an odor-free policy that doesn't lay out exactly what staff has to do to make it odor-free. And to me, that's getting into an area I don't think we should be getting into, so.
I believe your committee already discussed that and
Yes.
made that recommendation, so just so that you're aware. If there was a future recommendation, it would come through that was different, it would come through Properties, Director Grom. So for FA05, which is the smoke-free, stay where you are for a moment. I just wanted to see if the directors had any further comments, Carl. Any other comments on FA05? Then, I'm sorry, Carl, I didn't meet, that was the second time you came to the podium, so please.
I appreciate that the point was clarified that this is a smoke-free policy, so if there's an interest on an odor-free policy, as your previous operations manager, please be aware that that would take some serious consideration. Our cleaning products are limited, and especially from a financial point too, that they're a package deal that gets reviewed, periodically, and some companies have odor-free products, some don't. Odor-free is, I don't believe, backed by an ARS code, so it's a courtesy, and it's an important courtesy for the well-being of many people. So just tread carefully there if that consideration is made, that it's not so defined that we can't even meet that policy, okay?
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, coming out of the current Properties Committee, that was not a recommendation this year. If that changes, we're here to hear it. Thank you, Carl. Consensus, any objections to moving FA05 on to vote next week? Okay. FA06? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Director Piaskowski, I keep presuming that because you're on the committee that you're okay, but any objection to moving FAO 5 to vote next week? Hearing none, you can always come back on, Director Piaskowski. So let's move on to FAO 6. Director Chatton?
Thank you, President Novello. I think not a lot of changes, excuse me, to FAO 6. One, what I consider a significant change was under 2.6. The requirement at the end says, all sponsoring association members must be present for the entire duration. So basically it's saying, well, 5 people can't go in and rent this facility and they're never there. Just other people who they basically got the facility for are there. But otherwise, I don't know that there's, well, 2.3 also, where an individual renter or current board member of the group must be present for the entire duration of the rental. We're just trying to make sure that people who rent facilities are there and they're just not renting them and somebody else shows up. But outside of those clarifications, there's not a lot of changes to that.
We had again, I think this is something that some of the board members, well, all of the board members have discussed in various settings over the course of the fall. So thanks for tackling this one, Director Chatton. I'll open it up for questions from my fellow directors. Director Schlimmer.
It's rather picky. I'm going to start off with that. I sit next to Nick and some of it. I do have a concern about using the word requirement. I don't have a concern about the sentences after any of those. But, and this is my concern, there are policies and there are rules. And when you put the term requirement, it suddenly becomes a rule. I don't know that a rule belongs in a policy. A rule belongs in a rule statement. I would simply omit the words requirement in all of those and make the affirmative statements after each of those the policy.
I would agree.
Again, it's very picky.
I think that works just fine in the idea of having a requirement there. I think we have that in 3 different spots.
Yes.
We can just scratch that and that's
Strike the
fine.
word
It's
requirement.
actually in 4.
Right.
It's 2.3 all the way through 2.6. At the very end on all of them, you have requirement and then an affirmative statement. All of them, I would do the affirmative statement only.
Works for me.
Director Turner?
My issue, or my question, I don't, rather than having an issue, is with 2.6, and I don't know whether it needs a wider discussion within the community as well as within the board. But what this allows, and has happened, is that multiple elected officials or candidates can rent our facilities for a few $100s and have an open campaign rally that's open to the public. I think if we're going to be doing that, we should be charging political organizations that have got $1 billion to spend more than a few hundred. But I also question whether that is something that we wish to continue. The statutes say that association members can invite one candidate for political office to meet with the members to discuss matters relevant to the association and the membership, not 6 politicians, 3 of whom are serving and 3 of whom are candidates,
Right.
can rent the facilities and have a rally. That's not prohibited. We can continue to do that if we wish. I'm just wondering, is it something we wish to continue?
So the first thing I wanted to clarify, and then we'll let, of course, this is Director Chatton's proposal, but nothing here says rally, right? Because we explicitly prohibit campaign rallies, right? But this is rental for other uses, I would presume. It doesn't spell it out, but this is not for a political rally or
Well,
rental by a party.
recent-
This is a rental by an association member, as I read it. Is that?
No, it says rental by elected officials. It doesn't say rental by members of the association.
All sponsoring association. I stand corrected.
yeah.
Director Chatton?
This was a real issue not long ago when there was a political rally over at Palm Ridge. And I think there were 3 elected and 3 to be elected, or candidates that were there. I think in the end it was determined that we really couldn't prohibit them having a political rally. If we're going to start choosing who can and who cannot rent the facility, excuse me, as long as there's association members that are requesting those rentals, I think we're going to get into some lawsuits if we start doing that.
Right.
I like the idea of not allowing any political rentals or any rallies or anything to do with politics in our facilities, but how we would do that legally, I don't know.
I don't even know if we can, to your
Well,
point, right?
well
We learned, but-
the statute is clear. The statute says a member may invite one political candidate or one non-member guest to speak to an assembly of members about matters related to the community. So we must allow that.
Right.
There's
would you
nothing that
suggest
says,
we-
there's nothing that says we must allow multiple candidates to speak to non-residents.
So would you suggest we include that verbiage in the policy?
No, I'm a little unsure myself. What my concern is, I'm all in favour of people being able to meet with elected officials and candidates for office, and there's nothing wrong with that. That should be allowed. My concern is twofold. One is we're currently allowing what is in effect a political rally for non-residents in our facilities. If we wish to continue to do that, I don't really have a problem with it. I just think we should charge them more than $300 when they've got billions to spend.
So that's two different, one,
And the other thing is, if we're not going to allow it, then we should restrict such a rally. We can decide that they can have more than one candidate or more than one elected official, but should we restrict the audience to resident members only?
And if we charge more, I would suggest that also is a operational decision more so than a political decision as to what will get charged.
That's correct.
it's not a
yes.
policy decision. We can be looking for that in fees. Question for both Director Chatton and Director Turner. If we just struck all of 2.6 completely, doesn't that still accomplish the same goal of allowing our members to rent a facility to hold an event such as that, without explicitly saying that we're allowing elected officials, candidates, or political organizations to be sponsored? I mean, is there a need for 2.6?
Yeah, the statutes don't mention anything about payments, rentals, or pricing. Just
Right.
simply that we must allow a member.
Of course, I
Yeah, to
understand
do
that.
that.
I'm as
Yeah.
familiar with the statutes as you are. I'm saying that wouldn't we still accomplish the same goal just by striking 2.6? I'm wondering, and did the working group consider that, Director Chatton? I'm not sure.
I don't believe we considered striking that. We had a lot of discussion about when the rally did occur there. And I know the community, there were emails, Facebook, all kinds of comments out there about what should and why are we allowing that? And I believe there's a rule somewhere, I can't remember what the rule was, that basically doesn't allow any type of political meetings. So there was a conflict between the two, and I don't know that we were able, by using an allocation of space in facilities, to deal with that. So this is what we have.
Right, at the time, what was noted was that by Arizona statute that Director Turner was just reading to us, we must allow. It's not that, we must allow those to take place. Not necessarily total campaign events, but rather we must allow gatherings of our members to accomplish that statute. I'm wondering, does 2.6 do anything additional other than saying that a non-resident could rent one of our facilities with our sponsorship?
Well, it's the only one that's requiring 5 or more association members. So I think that works, requiring 5 or more. It's not just one person who comes up and brings in an elected official or a candidate. So I'm fine with it, but I'm also fine if you would like to see something different there. I'm not so sure that I'd want to remove it.
Okay, that's a bigger decision. I understand. I was throwing it out there for Director Turner's evaluation as well, because you were wondering, how do we accomplish this? And again, the statute's really clear that it's not a question of whether we do it or not. We must allow for this kind of discussion to occur in order to comply with statute. So, Director Turner, are you okay with the answers you've heard?
Yeah, I have no objection really to this moving forward as is. It's just a question, I think, that arose because of the rental, a few weeks ago. And there was objection from the community about that. There were concerns from the community and the governing board about security and how that would be managed, because there was a potential for counter demonstrations and trouble that didn't happen, fortunately, but that was one of the potential. And I think there's nothing in our policy at the moment that prevents revolutionary anarchists bringing 500 people in for a rally, or neo-Nazis.
As long as there's one neo-Nazi or one.
But if we had the policy,
I don't think there's no need, directors, to proceed by defining what we should and shouldn't do in this regard.
No,
we will always comply with Arizona statute, and we can just leave it at that. There's no need for us to discuss what may or may not be objectionable in terms of content. Thank you, directors.
I'm not saying whether that would be objectionable or not. I'm saying that this current policy would allow that for outsiders to attend such an event. If we adjusted the policy to meet the requirements of the statute, we could limit the attendees to residents. That's my point.
Understood. So, directors, how are we going to proceed forward? Thank you for your comments. Does anybody agree, disagree? I'm sorry, Director Crum. I was looking in this direction while he was speaking.
I've got a couple of comments. I thank you all because you've used the word rental quite often. Yet the title of this is Allocation of Space and Association Facilities. This truly is a rental policy as it defines who can rent our spaces. So I think we need to add the word rental, at least in the title. And then I get into, you talk about the purpose is equip space for our members, yet we go to 2.6 and we're renting it to someone that's not a member, essentially, is what the way I read it. And then the other item is we rent to non-chartered clubs, and nowhere in our documents do we even define what a non-chartered club is, with the exception, it is in the RRNPs simply to say a non-chartered club is a club that's not a chartered club. And so that doesn't tell us much. And the last thing is that when we talk about in other areas, non-chartered clubs, we refer to them as all their members are members of Sun City West, which is not true of the non-chartered clubs that we have listed on one of our web link pages. So I see this policy as having a lot of inconsistencies in it. And since we don't have a rental policy, I think we at least need to retitle this to be our rental policy for the moment, because it defines who can rent our spaces. Thank you.
Director Chatton, what's your response to that?
Well, it does deal a lot with rentals. I wouldn't be opposed to changing the title. Beyond that, I don't know that it calls for any changes to what we are proposing.
Sorry, Director Grom is correct on those definitions of a non-chartered club. Also, the bylaws, I believe it's in the bylaws, there's a reference to say that with permission of the governing board, the association can rent to Sun City West organisations. And that's not defined either. What is a Sun City West organisation? Yeah, and so I think there may be some clarity there. Now we can, if we choose, we can define a Sun City West organisation by policy rather than changing the bylaw. But there are some interesting wrinkles in there. It says that, I believe, just off the top of my head, it's a rental to a non-chartered club. It says something about a non-chartered club. All members must be association members there in 2.3, whereas chartered clubs can have association members and holders of tenant activity cards. This also says that a member of a non-chartered club, to which is getting rental space within, our facilities, can't have tenant members.
So I would.
Yeah, so there's a lot of little wrinkles and nuances in there that, maybe it's part of that larger review of all of our bylaws and policies that we're contracting out to just pick up on some of these inconsistencies.
Certainly. One of the short-term things that we may want to consider in 2.3 is rather than saying that all these groups, all members must be association members, there's already a requirement that the group must be, oh no, it's just the one renter must be present. So is this a secondary requirement that you're trying to define what the non-charter club is? Would you remove that and still move forward, Director Chatton? Is this something that we need to send back to your committee to discuss further?
I'm lost as to where you want to remove the
2.3 is where I am, right? Yeah, 2.3 defines a non-chartered club or nonprofit group as all members must be association members, and that's not in alignment with our RRMPs. Right?
Well, RRMPs don't cover non-chartered clubs, so this is an additional point in that this excludes tenants from being members of a non-chartered club. So in order for the association to provide space to a non-chartered club, that non-chartered club can't have tenants as members. Because it's all members must be association members. So there must be an owner member or an associate member, because that's what an association member is defined as. A tenant is not an association member. So,
okay,
it's just those, again, it's these little nuances, but I think the whole non-chartered club and how we allocate space to them and what is a non-chartered club needs revision, because as Director Grom says, some of them have members who are not residents.
that's true.
And they can't be a chartered club because they have non-resident members. And if we're saying they all have to have resident members, then it's defeating the purpose for some of those clubs.
Understood. So I need suggestions for how to move forward on FA06. Director Beckno?
I think if you take the language basically that was drafted in 2.6 and modify it just slightly into 2.3, that what you really want to make sure is that there's at least 5 members that are part of this non-charter or nonprofit non-charter club that are present for this event. So taking away all the elected officials, blah, 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 just put in the language that there's 5 association members that are there that are part of this rental. I don't think we want to go down the rabbit hole of defining all the non-charter clubs and things like that. I think we just want to ensure that at least 5 members of the 5 owner members of the association are
sponsoring the event.
Participating in that rental.
And you would want to do that under 2.3 also?
Just to modify 2.3 to include the 5 members idea, and take away all members must be association members.
So this might be one, Director Chatton, because of the nature, I don't know if you can commit on the spot that this still retains the same intention of your working group and your committee. If you need more time to evaluate it, you can bring this one back to us in January. Which way would you propose proceeding?
I would prefer to leave this one till January.
Okay. I think we've raised, although we do intend to do an end-to-end policy review, when we see something that we know has come up with a couple of questions, probably better to wrestle it to the ground while we know, rather than knowingly approve something that is going to cause us a problem. So any objections to having the Properties Committee just take a look at this and come back to us? Okay, so thanks for pointing that out. Anything else, Director Grom, that you had? Because I was looking in the other direction.
Well, I would like to add that kind of this whole policy, what is the board's or the association's feeling on renting our common area elements? I mean, by definition, our common areas are for the non-exclusive use of our members. And in this case now, we are looking to rent facilities to where you're going to have a lot of non-members present, which I don't have a problem with. But, like the whole thing with this having 5 sponsors, I don't know where that number came from. I mean, that was, I think, in the old policy, but, is 3 sponsors good enough? Or is just, if I'm going to rent the space and I'm there, I'm the member owner, I'm present. I don't need 5 other people or 4 other people to be sponsors to rent the space, if that's the way we feel about this in general.
So again, I think that's something that the Properties Committee can come back with a recommendation on. At this point, I have to assume that the committee, headed by Director Chatton and his working group, believe that this is important enough, right? But fair enough. Thank you. So, directors, I'm looking for, we have consensus to move forward for vote next week on FAO 1, FAO 2, FAO 5. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have an attachment for FAO 9 as well. One more, Director Chatton, and then we'll take a quick break.
FAO 9 is really quick. There are no changes to the policy. The only change is on the notice. There was no penalty on the notice if people were bringing alcohol into the facility or the golf course. Now it was added that violators will be asked to remove the alcohol or leave the licensed premises. That's the only change to FAO 9 is the notice.
Okay.
Does that mean that when we hold any of our lunches, like charter club lunches and so on, where we used to always say BYOB, that we're going to eliminate that option?
No,
more
that's not,
BYOB?
this doesn't pertain to that. This
Okay.
pertains to bringing alcohol into a licensed premise. So if
Yes,
someone brought
our
alcohol into
facilities.
Lizard Acres or onto one of our golf courses, which never happens. But seriously, if you're bringing, if it's against, so it's the licensed presence, the premise there, Director Becknell. It's okay. It's,
I assume that all of our facilities are licensed. We're not, so the social hall and Palm Ridge, those places are not licensed.
they're not licensed alcohol service places that I'm aware of. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yeah, this is referring to areas where we sell alcohol, so you can't bring alcohol into an area where we have a license to sell the alcohol.
Any other questions or concerns, directors, about moving that addendum forward? Does it, again, something that our staff advisors were okay with? So Stephen, I'm presuming that's, any comments or questions from our residents? I see none. Anything online, Director Forsey?
I would just like to say, I would be very hesitant in saying that only association members can attend whatever. Because out on the west side, it is very helpful for people to be able to come somewhat closer to go to this or that. So I would give that consideration.
And on which policy, or is that just an overall comment, Director Forsey? On the red line?
Yeah. There was talk, do we have it to where it's only association members, or do we let people from other neighborhoods come in?
FAO 6, is that what we're talking
Yeah,
about?
I'm looking for it. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for that, but we're looking for, I'm looking to see if there are any other comments on FAO 9. Karen?
If I can just get a clarification on the terminology on the notice that FAO 9 says golf. Does this apply to Lizard Lake?
Karen's looking for a clarification on where this applies. Karen, it applies to every licensed premise, everywhere where we are selling alcohol. So it's to bring alcohol into the facility or onto any part of a golf course.
Yeah, sure.
Is that clarifies?
No more birdie juice.
I expect I may be served with divorce papers. All right, folks, this is we still have a couple of longer agenda items to go. Right now, we are at 11:11. I'm going to call a short break. We will resume. Please be as quick as possible. I'd like to resume in 5 minutes. So 11:16, please. Please be back to resume our meeting at 11:16. Thank you.
Yes, you do still have me here. I'm not though, yeah, but I don't have you guys yet on picture. I just have intermission picture, so, but I'm good.
Call this meeting back to order, please. Director Becknell, the meeting has been called back to order. Director Becknell, Director Chatton, the meeting is called back to order. Thanks so much. Let's move on, folks, to, yes, I did. So we're calling this meeting back to order for the 5th time. We're going to move on to what's currently numbered 3.05. Our CIP manager, Herschel Workman, has been waiting so patiently to give us an update on the Lizard Acres Pub. Can you give us a quick update there? And thank you so much for waiting.
Thank you. Good morning, or almost afternoon, I guess I should say. Lizard Acres Pub, as you are aware, there was a recent issue discovered there with a hump in the floor, running almost the length of the floor back near where the dartboards were. We recently completed repairs on that issue, and I know one of the concerns in the community was, why wasn't this done during the recent remodeling of the pub overall? As a matter of fact, that was an unknown issue prior to completion of the pub remodel. And so once the issue was discovered, we quickly addressed it, and it's now completed. Here to answer any questions anybody might have.
Thanks, Herschel. Any questions from the board? Director Piaskowski, I hope that we haven't lost you. Anything that you wanted to add as the chair of Sports Pavilion?
No, I was just glad that he made that notation that it wasn't done during the renovation. It was always there.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the update. Any questions from our residents? Great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to play a little loose on the agenda because I'd like us to move to 3.08 and have that discussion first. So we've had at the end of our regular meeting in November, we were talking a bit and asking questions of each other and of our general manager, specifically related to the master plan, but just in general about procurement. And it prompted a lot of questions from directors on the board about how are we doing procurement, how are we adhering to, how are we following the financial policies for procurement, FI10, et cetera. So we're here to have that discussion now rather than just during director comments, because it was an important enough discussion to bring up and to discuss here. So we're going to start off with our CFO, Cliff Swan. So, because what I want to do, folks, is for us to look at some of the current processes first to make sure that we understand how things are intended to work. So we'll start with Cliff, and then we'll have Director Becknell, our treasurer, talk through the policy and the implementation from her perspective. So Cliff has put together just a couple of quick things, and he'll refer us to some things that are always there. So Cliff, take it away. Help us understand what we're looking at here.
Okay, thank you. So one of the concerns in talking with the board is that that we go through this annual budgeting process, and there's tons of detail that are given at the annual budgeting process, and through the approval in May, and then in June, there's a facts and findings presented to the board to request that the board give the general manager on the annual financial plan, the budget that was approved, that the board give the general manager the authority or delegate the authority to the general manager to go ahead and execute the funds in the budget. So what that means is the budget's approved. In our policies and bylaws, it says that the governing board, we have thresholds for approval, and it says that the governing board approve all purchases over 50,000. And so the exercise we go through in June is to get permission for the general manager to go forth and execute that budget for all purchases in the budget, including those over 50,000 that were budgeted. Okay. Now, if there's a contract or a specific contract that wasn't part of that facts and findings, those are brought forward to the board in individual facts and findings. And it's not just a dollar amount threshold, it's also a time limit threshold on purchases or contracts. So for example, we came to the board last year for the approval to enter into a uniform contract with Cintas. And the value of that was well under 50,000, well under 10,000. But because it was a contract that extended us past 1 year, we had to bring that forward to the board. So it's not carte blanche that we just have the ability to enter into contracts and things like that, but it does give us the ability to move forth on everything that's presented in the facts and findings, which is identified individually in the annual budget. So fast forward, had this meeting, learned of these concerns from the board, or some members from the board that we may not be, that we're worried about not being informed on purchases, large purchases. And so one of the things that came out of that meeting was that we would report on a monthly basis transactions or budget items in the capital budget that were over 100,000. We would give a status update on that, a more detailed status update, because we do give a status update on capital, and we give a detailed status update on capital, but we don't present it as part of our monthly presentation or a monthly financial presentation. So I developed this slide. It will be included in the financial presentation when we talk about capital improvements, to give a status update on all capital items, regardless if they're from the current year or if they're carried forward from the previous year. We'll give an update as to where we're at with that, what vendors we're working with, and what's been PO'd, and if it's been completed or not. And so this is a summary of all of the capital items through the month of October, because we haven't presented November yet. This is through the month of October that have been PO'd and that are completed, and what the status of those, whether they're completed or not completed. I'm sorry, this is through November, not through October. So for example, you'll see the master plan is on here. We know that we've moved forward with a contract on that. We didn't sign that contract or that PO until the month of December, so that'll be reported on the December summary report. So this kind of gives us, and then to the right, you'll see that the vendors that were selected as part of this project are listed there to give transparency into the vendors. And then, of course, any questions that may come from the board at the time regarding the selection process of the vendor or the timing of the project or anything like that can be discussed. And this way it's presented in a way and it's more open or more available to the board and to the community. Now, if you scroll down, if you click on the other, Terry, can you click on the other sheet? As part of our monthly reporting on the website, if you go to the financial package on the website, we do a very detailed presentation to the community every month on all the capital projects for the current year, all the capital projects that are still outstanding and what the status of those projects are. But if you scroll down to the next section, Terry, you'll also see in here we have all the capital projects and all the POs that were issued on all of the capital projects. And not only what they were, not individually what they were issued for, as well as the vendors that they were issued to. So this is also presented on a monthly basis and attached to the financial package on our website every month. And it has been since we've been here, since 2000, since four and a half years. So I don't know how far it goes back.
suncitywest.com/financials or?
Yeah, and then, yes, if you click on the top and go into the financial section, you'll see the reporting package. And this is a very detailed list of not only projects over 100,000, but all capital projects and all POs issued on those projects. Right. So those are also individually what the POs are and individually who those vendors are. So there's a lot of detail as well that's presented. Now, we don't present that as part of the financial presentation, but what we're proposing is to present that first slide that I put up, which is a summary of the capital project items over 100,000. And then also we will attach this list as part of the financial presentation packet that we present when we present our financials, and to help give some more transparency and just shed some more light on the details of our capital improvement projects.
Could we go back to that slide, Terry? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
I think I think also it would help, not only, I believe you present portions of this to the Budget and Finance Committee, but the governing board, I believe the governing board would benefit from seeing this slide or something like this slide, this information each month as well.
Yeah, so I will, I'll either present the financial presentation to the board as well, whatever the board wants, or I can just present this along with those attachments, or I can present this along with the capital budget. We could just call it a capital budget update if you want to do that, however you want to do that, or I could just include it with the financial presentation and be more regularly present to the board the whole financial presentation, whatever the board wants.
Yeah, the most important thing that I hope we all understand and respect is that the whole goal here is transparency. There are no secrets. I mean, when you looked at I know it was a bit of an eye chart for those of you who are at home and here. I couldn't read it, but I've read it before. What we show every month is intended to show everything that's happening. There are no secrets for our residents, and there's nothing that we would see that's unique and different. I think what we're trying to discuss here is what will help us as a board understand where we are, get some visibility into the decision process, I believe. But Cliff, can you also, before we move on, can you tell us a little bit the procurement process and policy? Procurement policy talks about sealed bids and so on. What do you guys, you're following that policy. I know that you've told me that, and I've seen it as the treasurer when I was a treasurer last year. Can you tell us a little bit about, do we use sealed bids and how do you see that happening?
Yeah, so policy FI10 is our procurement policy, and it outlines our bidding process. There are some exemptions to the bidding process, but that still require different forms of approval, whether they're from the general manager and the board, or whether they're from the board. There's different scenarios that are drawn out in here, whether they're emergency items, if they're for professional services, what our bidding process is on all those. There's also purchase amount limits that I talked about earlier. that are tied to our bylaws as well. And it details what type of bidding process we have to go through for those projects. So what you're referring to is sealed bids for projects over 50,000. So any contract or any purchase or RFP over 50,000, we receive sealed bids on those. And we go through the process. There are things we even receive sealed bids on that we don't necessarily have to, because when we find out in the bidding process that it's under 50,000, we've received them anyway. But because they were items over 50,000 in the budget, or part of a budget item that had a PO that was going to be over 50,000, we do receive those. Sometimes we engage with consulting firms like Gary Brawley for the irrigation projects, that we delegate the authority to him to go through the sealed bid process. And Todd can speak more about that process. We also do that with our seed. So there's operational items that we also go through the sealed bid process that are over 50,000. And then we have our own threshold operationally where we get multiple bids, even on things that are under 5,000, because it's so easy nowadays being able to go online onto Grainger or Amazon or whatever and get bids on things. So, but yeah, we have a process for all of that, and FI10 details that whole process. So I think the question at hand originally, was, do we want to continue to give the general manager authority to go forth and execute
Right.
on the budget? And I know operationally for us, it saves us money, it saves us time, it saves us red tape. And then at the same time, we can still present and be completely transparent on who we selected, what the amount of those bids were in terms of the bids that we selected and the vendors we decided to go with. So we present all of that to make sure that we're providing that transparency. But it does allow us to be as efficient as possible.
Right. And again, I think those on the board will ask their own questions, but we're all about efficiency. It's the transparency and the involvement, I think, that is a question. But don't go anywhere yet. I'd love to also hear, though, from Director Becknell, our treasurer. Your committee has reviewed the policy, and you yourself are directly involved. And you mentioned this earlier as well about checks. Could you tell the rest of the board, because again, having served in the role, I'm familiar, but I'd love to have you explain to us how that works from the treasurer's perspective and the visibility that you have in involvement.
From the treasurer's perspective, every week I receive a very detailed report from the finance team that shows literally every payment that was made to every vendor. So we're able to go back and look through it. I really appreciate how he's organizing this information so it's much more summarized than I don't think anybody wants to see the level of detail that I look at every week. But could you just do me one favor? Would you just roll forward to that eye chart for just a second? I just want to. I guess the one thing I was kind of maybe hoping to see was sort of a project identifier. I guess that is your project identifier. That's what you're calling the project identifier?
Yep.
Okay, all right. That's fine. Because it's much more helpful to sort those things out and to look at those things sort of grouped together by project and then see it with all the detail. But the committee was fine with the way that the procurement policy was written, and we reviewed it, and we find that the organization, the operations group, is compliant with that, 100%. And that what we really thought, after listening to a few comments from a couple of the other board members, was that we needed to have some a little bit deeper dive, summarized information, and that if we could provide that, then that would suffice. Not to make any changes, just to augment the reporting facility that we already have.
I hope so, but that's what we're here to discuss. Thank you so much, Director Bendel. So what we wanted to discuss now, directors, are, now that we've seen a little bit more information, hopefully, a recap on what happens during the process of not just budgeting, but at our final meeting of the year last year and in years prior, we make a motion that effectively delegates that responsibility. We're in compliance with FI10, but I think it's more, are we following the spirit of it? Do we feel connected enough with what's going on? And this is just a start, and thank you for putting it together, right, so we could see. The request that Cliff responded to was show us items that are over 100,000. There could be more, but again, the suggestion that came forward was let's start with the $100,000 items and up and take a look at those. Floor is open in terms of comments or questions. Does this help? Do we need more info? What do we think? Director Chatton?
I must comment, since I'm kind of this precipitated because of comments that I had made. I appreciate what Cliff has put together, and I want to emphasize to start with, nobody has done anything wrong. Everyone is following everything to the letter right now. My issue is we are not abiding by the intent, in my opinion, of FI10. We are telling the general manager that he can spend whatever to whoever, as long as it's within the approved budget. Well, I think that takes away a lot of the information from the board that they have a right to know. I'll give the master plan. We're going to have a presentation on the master plan from the people who have the contract at our January meeting, I believe. But did we have a presentation from these people before a contract was awarded? A lot of these items here that are capital projects, I don't know that everyone on the board would be particularly want to know a lot more information on. But we get into, we're going to do some, let's say we're going to redo all our patios and do more furniture. We're going to renovate this facility. I know for a fact that the board members would like to see what this renovation is going to look like and who is being recommended to do it before a contract is awarded. Not all of these items do I need to know who's going to do the lakeshore hardscape. I don't know that I need to know that. But those things that are being done that our residents see and comment on regularly, I think we need to know about those ahead of time. So I think I think I don't know if there's how to exactly do this, but I think certain things should be brought to the board before contracts are signed, even if the general manager has the authority to sign them. And I don't want to apply this to everything. I just want to apply it to certain larger projects. I know Carl's going to come and say, boy, they're going to lose out on some really good bids and some really good contracts if we have to take it to the board before they have those contracts. But I think the board knows ahead of time what their intention is and what
Don't
the
go away, just
project
hold.
is. I think that makes a difference. So I said
Sorry,
my
I didn't mean to
piece.
interrupt you, but we want to let the directors speak if we can, Carl, and thank you. If we're misspeaking or we need a fact, please jump up, but we will definitely come back to you. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Director Chutton. One of the questions I had for you and for all of us, right? Anybody who may share that kind of concern, and by the way, Director Chatton may have spoken up, but I strongly suspect that he's not the only one who had some of these concerns. So, and even if he was, we would still be here talking about it. I'm just saying, thank you for speaking and for bringing it up. I think it's an important discussion to have here. It's important to emphasize that, and I completely agree, no one has done anything wrong at all. What we're looking for here is more information. So what we have in front of us to look at, if we move forward like this, right, we have a listing each month. This is where we stand on capital projects. We can see what's been selected for vendors now, right? We can identify from this list, hey, when you get to the shoreline hardscape, I'm just making this up, John, right? I'm sorry, Director Chapman. So when you get to this is something that's of big concern, and I'm deliberately choosing one that we know is, as you had mentioned, maybe not top of mind, but we could identify, hey, when you get to this point, to the general manager, to Stephen, we'd like a little bit more knowledge about this before you move forward, or give us an update at the next meeting. However we want to guide it, we could guide it in that way. Right? That's one thing to consider. And I think we have in front of us a lot more information than the directors collectively have seen and had the opportunity to see before. Again, not because it was a secret, we just didn't have it in front of us. So with that information, we could look at these things and say, where do we stand on the irrigation system replacement? Not that I think we all know it's done, but we could pick these out and say, Stephen, as you get closer to this, we want to see an update. If that's the intention of what you're looking for. Personally, again, having worked on, advised corporate boards, there are certain guardrails that boards will establish, things like a multi-year contract, a merger and acquisition, for example, in a corporate setting, things that are really large commitments of our assets, of our reserves. Those are in our bylaws, I believe, in terms of some very specific guardrails that we must adhere to, and we do adhere to. We will always see and approve those, even if they're very small, right? Like you had said, a multi-year commitment and so forth. We will see those ahead of time, is my understanding, but I think what we're trying to get under the covers of here is how much more information we want to see. So consider that, we have a list in front of us now in terms of how we want to proceed going forward. So for others as well, first of all, does this help? I believe it does, but I would love to hear from you guys. Does it help? Do we want to continue to see this, and how do we want to use this going forward? I was deliberately looking to my right because I've been looking to my left too. So, okay, Director Schlemmer first, and then Director Turner. How's that?
So thank you, President Novello. We have to be careful that we have to recognize, A, what our role is, and B, what is the role of our professional staff. We are very well informed throughout all of the process of budgeting and proposals and things of that nature, all the way through the year of what's coming, what the expected expenditures are, and so forth. So none of this, in my opinion, ever comes as a surprise to us. We hire a very competent, very high-quality staff to entrust with running the organization and on these expenditures within the bounds that we set. I don't have any problem with the occasional exception where we want to say, before you move forward, we'd like to hear about this, or we would like to see that. But we also have to recognize that we have to give the organization the ability to function and do its job within the parameters that we've set forth. I think this does a very good job of doing that. We see what's happening and so forth. I don't think there's a need to go more granular. I don't want to see that eye chart that you just showed. It doesn't serve any purpose for what we do as a board, I don't think. And if there isn't a reason why, like insomnia, that I want to go look at it some night, I can certainly go online and do so. But I really want to caution us, because if we start crossing that line and becoming ingrained into the operations and making the decisions and handcuffing our staff from their ability to run the organization, we slow the process down, we run the risk that we lose opportunities, and we don't let the people that we've brought on board and pay good money to do their job. So I think we have to temper our enthusiasm with the reality. And as you said, Director Novello, just like a corporate board, and like you, I've had those interactions. You know, they entrust the leadership in those organizations to run those companies and those businesses, just as we entrust our staff to do the same. So I'm not saying completely hands off, but we have to recognize that we have a very competent staff. And in the one example that came up a few weeks ago, we actually empowered them to do what they did. So the failure, if we wanted to look at that stuff ahead of time, was on us. It's not on anybody else. It was on the board at the time that allowed that vote to go through. But I actually agree with the vote of that board, so I'm not being critical of it. But if there are things that we want to watch, we should have that discussion here, make the decision, let the board decide, and then empower the staff to do the work that they do.
We could make that decision at any point as well, Director Schlemmer, that we can't, if we start armchair quarterbacking every decision that was made by the 30 some odd boards prior to us, it's going to be very time consuming. So I'm grateful that that you supported that. And in this particular case, I do concur. I mean, it's a matter, it's up for our discussion though. An occasional, or I believe that it will be an occasional, or there might be one or two projects in a list each year that perhaps the board feels this is something really important, and Stephen, we want to see more about this. We want to be more involved. Those are solutions or opportunities that we have to apply going forward. So do want to emphasize, I think Director Chatton had said the same thing. No one's done anything wrong here. We're trying to improve how we work. Fair enough. Director Turner, I think you had a comment or question as well?
Yes, one is when it comes to selection of vendors, we as a board are not really qualified to select these vendors. If you take the Echo Mesa irrigation system, for example, we're not experts in irrigation systems or large, huge contractors who do multi-million-dollar irrigation projects. But Todd did come to the board and explained why Wadsworth had been selected. And that was good and useful information. And I think maybe on some of these, if we understand why why that bidder was selected, why that bidder was chosen, and that also helps protect, if you like, the commercial confidentiality of the failed bidders, which is something I wouldn't want public knowledge of all of the bids that are coming in for all of our contracts in some way. The information is there, we could look at it if we wished, but I wouldn't want a public debate by non-qualified people over the merits of different bidders.
I need to comment on that, because not once have I suggested that the board should get involved with choosing the contractor. I think we have the people on staff to make those decisions. My comment is it needs to come before the board so we have knowledge of what's going on. And in some cases, before a contract is signed, in most cases, doesn't matter. But I think we need to know, we need more information as to what's going on. We get questions all the time from residents that we can't answer. What's going on with the pool decking? Have we hired a contractor to do something? Has a decision been made? Where are we at with that? It's a huge issue that we really don't know anything about right now. So I'm just looking at having more information going forward and having us informed on some of these huge projects before they're a done deal.
No, I'm not suggesting that that's what you suggested, but I have heard from, again, residents saying that residents have said to me that the strict interpretation of that policy is that there should be at least 3 sealed bids on the table and we open them here as the governing board. And I would not want to see that. Yeah.
No, thank you for clarifying. For the past, even during my tenure on Budget and Finance Committee as a committee member before I was a board member, those questions do come up because that is when you read the policy on its own. That's exactly how you could misinterpret or interpret it, right? It's up to us to decide how we want to operate. We as a board have decided for the past several years to operate in this way. It doesn't mean we have to always continue, although, like several of you, I hope we do. That does put us more in the mindset of a corporate board. But another thing a corporate board or any of us would do, we can look at some of these projects and indicate to our staff that these are projects that we are closer to us and we want to hear more detail about. A listing like this puts this back in our hands. So I hope that you'll agree that we may not, I hope that we don't get to a point as a board in the future that we are operating in the way that some of our residents have interpreted. It would really slow our staff down. It would slow us down even further, right? So nonetheless, we're talking here about information and intention. As I understand it, it's to my experience, there's not been an intention to hide any information. It's more, how do we keep ourselves informed without slowing the process down? I hope that's the case. So Director Piaskowski, I know that it's hard when I'm looking straight at your name tag. I want to make sure that if you have any questions that I'm not forgetting to come back to you on those. So,
okay. So I'm going to back John on this in the sense that I just think that we just need more information. And I'm going to just take the master plan for an example. So we as a board just found out that there were three that they considered. And one for sure was out right away. I'm not too sure why. And then there was two. Now, we have given this almost $300,000 contract to Barry Dunn, and we don't know anything about Barry Dunn. Nothing, and like John said, we don't want to make that decision of who the management team wants to take. But it would be nice to have a little presentation saying, hey, this is Barry Dunn, this is the Piaskowski, and this is why we chose them, this is why we didn't choose them. Just so we are informed, so when our residents say, holy moly, you guys signed a contract for $300,000, who is Barry Dunn? Well, I don't really know. That's not a good answer for our residents. And again, we have master plan coming up. We're going to have some big ticket items, and it would just be nice to be able to have information or have, especially when master plan comes, right? That, if we decide to redo the courtyard and everything else, that we have informational meeting for our residents to say, this is the company we've chosen, this is what we're going to be doing, which I'm sure they're going to do that in the master plan, but we've never seen that in the past. I mean, i.e., the pub, the Lizard Acres, was redone. I never in one meeting saw a color board of what that was going to look like.
it was
Ever.
all, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Continue, and then I'll weigh in. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I never knew they were doing purple. I mean, it was all, they did it, which it turned out great, but again, it would have been a nice presentation to say, hey, this is what we're gonna be doing, this is the look. I mean, we've talked about the long bar, we talked about all that, but we never saw the color board on the colors that were chosen for that. And that's, I think, is all John's trying to get across, is that we as a board should be more informed on big ticket items. That's another big ticket item. We spent $200,000 on that ticket.
Right.
Do we want to?
And we were getting some updates in different settings. So I'd just like Stephen to respond perhaps to a couple of your comments.
Yeah, thank you, President. So first of all, I want to remind, because this seems to be centered around the master plan. As you all recall, in September, I brought you the RFP draft for your consideration, just to keep you informed and to let you know what we were looking for out of a vendor. At no point during that did I hear any consideration of wanting to have the vendor brought to you before contract was signed. In addition to that, the following month, during my individual one-on-ones with each one of you, I gave an update, and in that time did say that there were 3 consultants that had submitted, and that we were in the process of interviewing them and would be selecting from that process. At no point did I hear from any of you that you felt it was appropriate prior to that to bring it to the board. And listen, this I'm going to defend myself here a little bit because I agree with what Director Turner is mentioning. From a experience standpoint, I would venture to guess that perhaps maybe beyond John, that none of you have ever awarded a contract for a master plan in your career. I have. So we can all look back and say, well, it should have been this way, it should have been that way. I would hope that, and I think you've mentioned this, President Novello, that, and some of you, and you as well as Director Schlemmer, you hire folks such as myself, and you rely on them to bring these things forward in a way that is done and it is going to be productive and efficient and find the best quality contractor, which is what I believe we did find through a very intense process of interviewing and reviewing their proposals and picking the best vendor. You know, we can all look back and say it should have been done differently. I would just remind everybody and make sure that it's clear that those opportunities to have that done differently existed. And this is where we're at. So, and I know, Director Chatton, I realize and I appreciate you continuing to say, and I agree that nobody's done anything wrong, and I completely agree with that. I just want to make it clear as and remind how this process has evolved.
Thanks for that, Stephen. I also wanted in the RFP process just to remind us all, not only were we consulted, but we actually reviewed the RFP before it went out. We had the opportunity to comment, and we agreed as a group that the RFP looked good, right? So that's just one example. And as you mentioned, I believe in one-on-one updates. We all received updates as this was going through. I think one of the things that I hope we all learn from this is the one-on-one meetings with you and our meetings together as a board are intended to be collaborative. This is where we should be able to question each other and to bring up and say, this is what I expect going forward. So at no point should we feel that we're shut out of a process. We are the governing board. Yes, we did delegate authority and transactional ability and so forth. We still have the ability, looking at this list going forward, if there's something on here that we need or want or expect to see more information about before it goes to contract, we should speak up. And that goes, I think that's a great way for us to learn going forward. If we want more information, we have to ask for it. I hope that that's something that we can learn and adopt going forward. For things like some of the projects that we've seen, like Director Piaskowski was talking about Lizard Acres, the whole community got to see some of the design as it was being created throughout. I don't know that the board was explicitly consulted about things like furnishings and colors, but if it was something that we wanted to see, we had the opportunity to speak up and ask as well. We can learn from the things that have happened in the past so that we can improve them going forward. I think that's what we're here to discuss, right? So again, Stephen, you have the support of many, you've heard us here on the board talking about the fact that it's not so much a matter of things that have gone wrong, but how can we possibly do things better in the future? As a board, what we need to discuss or determine going forward is, do we, as a majority of us, do we want to review some of these things in detail? Do we want to look at bids in detail, or do we simply want to use this information going forward and guide Stephen and his staff and say, these are items that we want to get a closer look on as you get closer? So those are some of the options available. Directors, what else can we, do we need to make a decision on things to do differently? Or do you like the information that's being presented? We can continue to adapt this going forward. For Cliff can come to us each month, present this overall summary so we can see it and then comment on it and ask questions for the future month upcoming. Do you want to start there? Is there something specific that you want to add to this? Let's hear from you with some solutions. Director Forsey?
I really appreciate the way that this synopsis is made. And I also know where to go if I have questions or concerns about the dollar amounts. So I think it is on our shoulders, if we have a misgiving or a problem with it, that we go to those sources instead of stirring around about it.
Thank you. The other opportunity we have is Budget and Finance gets an even deeper dive on some of these. Budget and Finance in their reviews, by their request, sees for each of the POs that are issued, as things are progressing, what's the percentage complete, I believe, right? So, so that all those reports are available for us to look at. I don't believe that the board needs to see those in that detail each month. But again, something that we have available to us and the entire community has as well. So is there anything missing from this going forward? I understand, I'm not trying to close off the concerns discussion. I think we have a lot to learn. But from what we see going forward, is this information that we want to see each month?
Christine?
I'm seeing some nods. Oh, yes, Director Pieskoski.
I think his little sheet that he behind you guys is great. I think we should see that every month, just to know where we're at. I mean, a lot of people, I know it's our duty to go to BNF and watch, but sometimes we have other things going on, so we can't always do that. But if he could come every month to the workshop or just probably one, it doesn't have to be both meetings, just the workshop or the regular meeting, and give us a synopsis of the capital projects, that this is where we're at, the POs, yep, we're out for contract, whatever. So we are more informed. If there's 2 contracts we've sent out 2 RFPs, that at least we are informed.
I think that's fair. And again, Director Pieskoski, that's great feedback. When we see this, if we see something that does prompt a question, right, from you, from me, from anybody that says, and again, I'm pulling them off the slide that I think you can see behind us. I hope you can. So if we had a question about the lawn bowling regrassing, a specific one, come to us. I'm making this up, by the way, Cliff. But if that was something that we really wanted to see, hey, we want to see when you're getting closer to a vendor selection, give us an update on that. We can actually speak up and say it then. And I'm confident the team will come back to us with more information if that's what we're looking for. But I think what I heard from Stephen, and it's my own experience as well, that we do have several opportunities to contribute and to give that feedback. Please, let's use those. And if we need, we'll take this going forward. And thank you very much, Cliff, for the information. Once a month, pick the right time when you have the information. Workshop would be great, but show us where we stand, and if we have questions or concerns, that's the time to bring it up.
Will do.
Any other, I ran out of batteries, so Director Forsey, do we have any questions or concerns? Any questions from the hardcore remainders? And I did ask you, is there anything that you wanted to add as well, Carl? I did ask you to let the directors proceed forward, so.
There's no questions. People are watching it, but there's no questions.
Yes, I think all the points that were made here, valid. I do appreciate Director Schlemmer's comments on acknowledging the professional staff that you've hired to make some of these decisions. My key takeaway is timing is super important. So remember that the governing board does go dark during the summer in our highest level of production for the approved budget and projects that need to be completed. So it's not very simple to be able to present to you if you're dark. So that's just a super important point of moving forward and hitting it in our off seasons. So that's probably my most important thing to say there. And then finally, the comments from Director Pieskoski about like, let's just say Lizard Acres Pub as an example. Again, you hire staff, and we do have a lot of discussions on this. We bring things to our Monday morning meetings of the general manager's staff meeting about colorization, things like that. If we would have chosen green for any particular project, somebody was going to say, why green? So those details, I think we do take seriously in advance of implementing a project. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Again, we have, the onus is on us as directors to speak up to each other, to the general manager when we have questions. And I hope by now we are all aware that we are in this together. We're 9 people, all of whom everybody's input is as equal as the other person's. None of us is more important than the other in terms of our knowledge, our capabilities, or our input, and that goes for me as well. So we're all equal in terms of our input, and it's all valuable, and that's what this is for. So again, I want to thank Director Chatton for bringing his concerns to us, to allowing, to opening up this discussion so we could have it openly and freely. Very much appreciate this information, Cliff. I hope it's not too much overhead to produce.
No.
I know you guys produce a lot of stuff already. So we look forward to seeing an update at the workshop in January.
We're always looking for reasons to get up in front of the microphone, so it's fine. We need attention. We're finance.
So let's start here. And again, if we realize that there's something more that we want or need going forward, we'll start with this and we'll take it from there. So again, I do thank you all. So with that, that's 3.08. Directors, we wanted to wrap up with the strategic plan, master plan, and so forth. We've lost the audience. So my question for you is, would we like to move those 2 items of update to next week's regular meeting? So we have consensus on that. Director Schlemmer, is that okay with you as well? Because you're on there for the recap.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move both the item about the strategic plan and master plan and the community tour recap. We'll put those on for next week at our regular meeting. None of those require any decisions, so we'll make them quick. So before we open it up for all director comments, I am so sad that we lost most of the audience, but one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I did was recognize Carl before he leaves, because Carl Wilhelm has been an invaluable member of our entire community, an invaluable resource to all of us, and came out of retirement to fill a gap. I know that we are in very competent hands with Herschel joining the team, but Carl, I cannot thank you enough. As a director, as a person, really, you have been an unbelievably dedicated member of the team, and gosh, we will miss seeing your smiling face at these meetings. So although it's a very small audience, let's have a round. And come January, when you're officially re-retired, I look forward to buying you a beer in the pub that you work so hard on. So directors, I turn it over to the rest. Director Piaskowski, any final comments or questions?
Great meeting. I just also want to recognize that Denise Babarak, I believe, she was part of our HR team for many years, and it was down at working with Russ as the secretary. I believe today is her last day. So congratulations, you've made it. You are good to go. Retire. Enjoy your wildlife.
Welcome. Thank you for that, Jolene. Director Piaskowski, and congratulations, Denise, as well. Director Turner?
No comment.
Director Schlemmer?
I will be very quick. Yesterday evening at the Sun City West Foundation, which as many of you know is not funded through the rec centers, had their one of their fundraising events, the Chili Cook-Off. My neighbor here was one of the contestants, but at any rate, a really great evening. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is I always like to highlight some great things that our clubs do. And I won't try to say their name, but the Hawaiian Dance Troupe of Dance Sensations, they have a very Hawaiian name, but I'm not even going to try, was the guest performers. And they were phenomenal, and I want to applaud them and Dance Sensations. They did a super job, and I know they have a performance coming up in the spring, so hopefully many of us will try to make it to that. But thank you to them, and thank you for everybody, some of my fellow board members who supported the foundation.
I understand I missed some really good chili, so thank you. Director Becknell, condolences for losing the.
Yeah, I still have some chili at home if you'd like some. No, but it was a wonderful evening, very, very surprise entertainment. Lots of great people, lots of great fellowship with other owner members. So congratulations to Sun City West Foundation, what they did, and I hope they made a few bucks. And I'm in so much shock that Nick didn't have anything else to say. I can't think of anything else to say.
Director Chatton, any final comments?
Let's hope not.
Thank you, sir. Director Forsey?
No comment.
Director Grom?
No comment.
Director Williams?
Yes, this has been a bit of a heavy morning, or now we are in the afternoon. I want to share with you the accomplishments of one of our clubs. Angels in the Outfield is one of the side partners with the softball club, of course. Believe it or not, for 9 years I was an angel. But I want to tell you what they just did, because this was really super. Just the softball people themselves. We had 4 schools that we provided toys, money, and other things to. Kingswood Elementary School got a $1,000 gift card, 5 bicycles that were worth about $700, $650 in toys. The total for that one school alone is $2,350. The other schools that some of you may or not even be familiar with, we have a school called Discovery U Elementary. They got a $600 gift card, $650 in toys, for a total of $1,250. Eve's Place, I'm sure some of you are very familiar with Eve's Place. They got a $625 check, $600 in toys, $1,225. And the last one, the Dysart Community Center, $625 in checks, $1,200 in toys for $1,825. So the Angels, with their energy and the deep pockets of the softball players, they all decided to pitch in. And so with that, I'd just like us to give recognition to them for on their own, raising that much money and that much help to 4 of the areas that would not have gotten that extra handout when they need it. So also the Women's Club, and again, the Angels and the Boomers had on the first of the month, we brought in, we were brave, 4 busloads of kindergarten first and second graders. They performed for us. They also got to sit on Santa's lap and tell him what they wanted for Christmas. And then there were over 100 of us ladies from these various groups who had volunteered to each have a child. We took them in. We were wise enough to have in 2 separate rooms, the boys' toys and the girls' toys. And we went through with each one of those kids and helped them pick out a toy. And these are kids that may be the only toy they see at Christmas. And it was really heartwarming to see the smiles on their faces and the fact that sometimes we take life a little too serious and need to remember what's really important. Thank you.
Thanks for that. What a great way to uplift us at the end of a heavy morning. But speaking of uplift, I think we have some other good information to share. Stephen?
Yes, thank you, President Novella. So as you all recall, I like to, on a quarterly basis, just sort of call out some of the great comments that we get from our members about our staff. But I also do want to point out that, yes, Denise in facilities, as well as Graham, who is also in our facilities maintenance team, they both are actually retiring and having a little thing today to celebrate them. And I appreciate all of their years of service to the community. They've been a great asset to us. But wanted to bring out some of these just, again, for you all to, I'm not going to read them all, of course, but just some of the great comments that we get. For example, we have, Brian over at Coons, just, he helping out with there. And I think one of the ones that I really liked on here was the one for Dustin and Jeff, how during a celebration of life event, how they were incredibly helpful and were there for anything the person needed. That's just one of those things that people don't realize that our staff even take care of and help out with. So again, I just like to, on a quarterly basis, kind of bring to light some of these great comments that are put out there about our team. And just a reminder of just what an awesome group that we have that really just do an amazing job every day, making sure that all of our members are taken care of. And this is just a small sampling of the many comments we've gotten. And also a reminder, we do have the Kudo card or the Kudo comments. If you have the QR codes for those. So if you have a great interaction with one of our team members, certainly fill out one of those kudos forms or use the QR code to fill it out, and they get recognized, and it's a great way to show your support for our team and all the great things they do. So thank you for that.
Thanks for bringing these to our attention. It's always good to end on an up note. Next week, our regular meeting, just as a reminder, our regular meeting is on the 18th, but we will start at 10 a.m. So that we have time to finish up the celebrations of our holiday breakfast with our employees. So 10 a.m., we get to sleep in a little bit longer as a community and as directors, those of us who will not be at the breakfast anyway. And our next workshop meeting will be on January 9th, 2026. Wow, that was a quick year. So the workshop's January 9th, and next week is our regular meeting on the 18th at 10 a.m. So we'll see you at both of those, and I adjourn the meeting at 12:18. Thank you.